Holy cow, I think it worked. Yes. Okay. Whew. Sorry about that. Apparently, I needed to update like 3 different drivers. I tested this yesterday and it worked fine. However, today, apparently, I needed updated drivers. So that was super exciting. So, welcome, Dungeon Hackers. Let's take a look at the monster manual. If there's anything that you would like to see, please let me know in the chat. I am going to, let's see, I need to get the chat connected over here so I can see that a little bit easier. That's what I was afraid of. Not now. Dungeon. Select stream. This one. Okay. All right, I have my chat up now too. And it jumped right in with an immediate warning. Something about my bit rate, I'm sure. It's fine. Okay. So, I do not have my monsters manual. So, however, I do have it electronically online, but they did not get it delivered to me in person quite yet. So, we can still take a look at everything online, though. I have a list of a few things that I'd like to take a look at and check out. And like I said, if you have anything else that you are particularly interested in, then we can take a look at that as well. I'm going to start by just coming right into the beginning, and we will kind of cruise through this intro part. I'm sure most of us are fairly familiar with how to use a monster, but this will give us a chance to kind of see maybe how they've got this organized a little bit, and maybe give us a little insight into their thought process. So I am looking at a couple different screens, so if you all of a sudden don't see something I'm talking about, it may be off the bottom of the screen, although it looks like they're pretty well lined up. So anyway, how to use a monster. Every monster is a font of adventure. In this bestiary of Dungeons & Dragons monsters, you'll discover the weird, the whimsical, the majestic, and the macabre. Choose your favorites, make them part of your D&D play. Let's see, Player's Handbook and Dungeon Master's Guide, and this make the foundation of the required books. This book is intended for Dungeon Masters, so if you're not a Dungeon Master, I guess you're not supposed to be watching this stream. But I'll let you in on a secret. You can still look at the other books. The statistics appear in stat blocks. Animals are all gathered up in Appendix A. Official D&D adventures refer to monsters in this book. You may use these monsters along with the rules for monster customization. So we'll have to check out their monster customization suggestions. Encounter building. I'd like to see about encounter building. And in the Dungeon Master's Guide to build your own adventures. Consult Appendix B for monster lists that will help your adventure building. What's new? More monsters. The number of monsters has increased. There is now 500 in the stat block, or 500 stat blocks in the book. There's some new monsters, dozens of new monsters, including more high-level threats. I have noticed in a lot of the videos that I've been seeing on stuff, it seems like they added a lot of higher-level monsters. So I wonder if if there's very many new lower-level monsters, or if most of the monsters they added were focused primarily on higher-leveled play. which would be interesting because I noticed a lot of people talk about how there's not a whole lot of higher level play, that campaigns tend to peter out a little before that. So I don't know if they're trying to encourage people to go to higher level play, or if they think that campaigns end early because there's just nothing to do at higher levels. I don't know. We'll have to see. Okay. Every stat block has been updated for ease of use and game balance. I think that we've seen some stat blocks that look a little different, so we'll see. We'll compare some of the older stat blocks to some of the newer ones and see whether or not we like the new design. The new stat block and the new stat block design and language prioritize details vital during play. They have talked about how they want their stat blocks to be all that you need to run the game. So we'll see. Versatile groups. Non-player characters now appear alongside other monsters and can represent individuals of any humanoid species. We will touch on that point again a little bit later. I did have a video come out recently that talked about the changes in creature type, and not a huge fan of the changes in some of the creature types. Some of them I understand. Some of them I disagree with, but we'll touch on some of that later. One of the things is that if you want, I'm sure some of you have seen videos talking about it, orcs no longer in the monsters manual. I took a quick look down the list of creatures. There is no orc in the monster manual at all. There's a pirate, which can be any humanoid, so you can have a orc pirate, or you can have a orc warrior, not even just a warrior, but like a warrior / infantry. So there's a lot of things that are just, any humanoid can be this. Now, this is where I get into some frustration because goblins, for example, aren't humanoids anymore, so you couldn't have a goblin pirate. Now, of course, you can homebrew anything you want. You can make the game whatever you want. It's your game. However, a lot of times I get comments on my videos telling me, oh, well, you can always just homebrew that. Well, that's true. You can homebrew anything you want because it's your game. You can use only half of the rules in the book and still be able to play a game and have a good time. But this is a D&D YouTube channel, so we're going to talk about things assuming that we're going to use the rules and the mechanics within the game. So if the mechanics aren't there, then yes, you can totally homebrew to fix things. However, we're looking at this through the lens of, is it in the rules? Does it work in the rules? Can you do this within the Dungeons and Dragons rule set? So with that said, they've got better organization and some expanded lists later. So let's take a look at the new stat block. You can see that they have the name up here. The example they're giving us is the Vampire Familiar. Has the general details. You get your combat highlights like your armor class, your initiative. They do include a passive initiative for everybody that doesn't know how to add 10 to a number. They have hit points here. It shows you not only the average hit points, but also how it was generated. And how it's generated is good to know in case you want a little variety. A lot of applications that I use are focus, or like a lot of the applications I use when I'm running encounters have the will dynamically roll those. So you have some creatures with higher hit points and you have some creatures with lower hit points that are all of the same type. Let's see. I don't think I'm getting my chats because it looks like I have a chat. 500 ways to have a TPK? Yeah, absolutely. I wouldn't know anything about that. I've never killed my entire party 4 or 5 times. Why aren't my chats coming through over here so that I can see them? I'll just have to keep an eye on it. Tools. YouTube chat. Aha. I didn't want that over there. Okay, well, we'll just have to keep an eye on it. All right, next we have the ability scores, and this is where a small change took place. They have the modifier and the save right next to them here. Previously, anything that had bonuses to saves, for example, the dexterity here is +5 on save, so that, and the wisdom +2, so they're proficient in their dexterity and wisdom saving throws, and they used to just be listed down here in the next section. So it is no longer listed down there. There we go. YouTube chat. Down here we have their skills: perception, persuasion, stealth. Any skill that they're going to be proficient in. So normally perception would be wisdom, so it would be a +2. However, they're proficient, so they get the extra. So that's included there. Your resistance and immunities, relatively same as before. They do have something additional here now called gear. This is the kind of gear that you might be able to find if your party defeats them. So if you kill a vampire familiar, they've probably got daggers. I guess 10 daggers. It's a lot of daggers. So they've got some daggers. I'm going to bring chat up on my phone because it's not showing up on my software. And I want to be able to talk to you guys. So let's see. My videos. Senses, language, challenge rating. Then we come down, we've got some traits. Comments. Okay. Can't get that on my phone either. Why don't we do this? Maybe this will help a little bit for me. Trying to get this thing to work right. So actions, multi-attack. The familiar makes 2 umbral dagger attacks. Umbral dagger talks about what that does. So your actions are relatively the same as before. Section for bonus actions. I would assume that if it has resistant or reactions or legendary actions, that would be down here as well. Additional things in the monster's entries, other than just the stat block, they've added habitat. So this is going to tell us the monster's habitat entry notes, or the monster's habitat entry notes where the monsters typically dwell. Lists of monsters organized by habitat appear in Appendix B, which is nice if you are running an adventure in, say, the Arctic, and you want to find out what kinds of creatures could be found there. You can always do that. This is where they typically dwell. They could always dwell anywhere, and maybe that's part of what the adventure is why in the world is this particular creature so far away from its natural habitat. Then it shows treasure. I was kind of hoping for a little more guidance on this. I looked at a couple of things. And so, up there it told us, what did it say for did it tell us any treasure for this? I don't think so. Well, we'll see it here in a minute, but it tells you just the theme of the treasure. And then you have to go in and pick that, which, obviously I don't want them to say every vampire spawn has exactly this much gold and this specific magic item. But I was hoping that there was maybe a little more guidance. In older versions, they will tell you about which like more about which tables to roll on and the chances that they'd have certain stuff, and it kind of gives you a little bit more guidance. And we'll see when we look down at some of these stat blocks that it's not exactly how it works in this excuse me, in this guide. It provides more information on treasure over here. So special lairs. Some monsters alter the region around their lairs. I think we all know, a dragon or something is going to have an effect on the land around them. However, they don't apparently have any special abilities within their lairs. They just get an extra use of some of their regular abilities. And so then it comes through, and we've already looked at some of these. The creature types, it's a list of the creature types. I would like to look at a specific definition. Humanoids are people defined by their roles and professions, such as mages, pirates, and warriors. These include members of varied species. So this is what I was talking about earlier. There are no orcs in the monster manual. If you want an orc, you have to pick which job it has, and then make it a orc mage or an orc pirate or an orc warrior. And I don't particularly like that, because then it also suggests that you wouldn't be able to have goblin pirates or kinku mages or bugbear warriors, because those are not humanoids. Where is your videos? I gotta get this figured out. So then it goes through all the other ones. Descriptive tags, alignment. The alignment is the default suggestion. I've never been a big fan of worrying about alignment within the game. I feel like how you want your monsters to act. It's okay to give a general suggestion for the monsters. It gives you an idea of how the monsters generally act, especially for the monsters. But alignment for the player characters, I feel like you know how you want your character to be, so you describe your character and their actions, and that's how it should go. Especially since you can do things outside of their alignment anyway. That's just how they typically act. So can the stat block give me a notification when I forget to use a monster's power? Boy, I wish. I forget things on the monster stat blocks all the time. Yes, Phil. Homebrew coming. For sure. But I know, Phil, you are a big fan of the stat blocks are only guidelines anyway. So that's a good point, that you aren't just doing whatever they say in here. You are doing whatever you need the monsters and stuff to do. Armor class, initiative, hit points. Gives you an idea of average hit points by size and hit dice by size. Talks about their speed, how they move, ability score, skills, resistance and vulnerabilities. I'd like to see more vulnerabilities, I think. There weren't a ton, and I don't want everything to have some sort of vulnerability, but I feel like there should be some vulnerabilities. Some things like, Yetis being vulnerable to fire, or, things along those lines. I feel like it gives you more reason to have a variety of spells and damage types and things like that, if it actually matters. I mean, if you're fighting something with no vulnerabilities, then it doesn't matter if you use fire or acid or cold or anything. Then we look at gear. Here's where they talk about the monsters have proficiency with their equipment. If a monster has equipment that can be given away or retrieved, the items are listed in the gear entry. So that's where the vampire spawn earlier that said it had 10 daggers. So if you kill it, you can take 10 daggers. I would argue that unless it was naked, you probably could take its clothes too. So it kind of... There's certainly going to be other things that you could use as well when you find something. The monster stat block might include special flourishes that happen when the monster uses an item, and the stat block might ignore player handbook rules for that item. I have no problem with the monsters doing things that the players can't necessarily do. When used by someone else, a retrievable item uses the player's handbook rules, ignoring the special flourishes in the stat block. So I suppose that would be like, let's go look up the vampire spawn. I think it had something in there about that. I feel like. Melee or ranged attack roll +5, reach 5. It's got a range. Piercing +7 necrotic damage. So it has the umbral dagger. When the player loots it, they don't get the umbral dagger. They just get a dagger. Right, so they wouldn't get the additional necrotic damage. You could certainly have a magical umbral dagger on your vampire spawn that the players could get, but they don't automatically get it just because that's the ability of the item within the monster's stat block. Okay, parts of a stat block. We were down here at gear. The gear entry doesn't necessarily list all of the monster's equipment. For example, the monster that wears clothes, hey, I was ahead of my time, is assumed to be dressed appropriately, and those clothes aren't in this entry. Equipment mentioned outside the gear entry is considered to be supernatural or highly specialized, and it is unusable when the monster is defeated. Monsters that require ammunition to make ranged attacks carry the necessary ammunition. So if it lists that they have a bow but doesn't list that they have arrows, they have arrows. Equipping a monster with other items. We've talked about this. I have a series of videos that talk about upgrading the monsters and what kind of magic items you could apply to certain monsters to give them a buff in combat. That will, however, make the monster obviously more powerful, and you have to weigh that with what effect it'll have once the party has that magic item as well. But it's a good way to add a little bit more variety to your monsters without having to homebrew and change things around. Beware of giving monsters combat-oriented magic items, since those magic items alter the monster's challenge rating. I just said that. Talks about their senses, their languages. It defines telepathy as a magical ability that allows a creature to communicate mentally with another creature within a specified range. Challenge rating is defined in the player's handbook, while guidance on using CR to plan potential combat encounters is in the Dungeon Master's Guide. Lists of monsters organized by challenge rating appear in Appendix B. So if you know you want a specific size or a specific challenge rating of monster, you can check that table at the end of the monster manual, and then if you want to go in and make adjustments to it, you can always reskin monsters if it doesn't fit exactly right. So you can always do that. You could make any, since it lists species, couldn't you make any species those particular job holders? Yes, you could. You could absolutely make any species the job holders. That's just reskinning it. But it's weird to me that a species like orc that is so written into everything within the game doesn't have its own stat block. It's just automatically a monster. I feel like orcs don't work the same as your standard pirates. I mean, you could have orc pirates, but a basic generic orc is going to be different than those different stat blocks. I don't know. I'm just whining. Shows the experience point value by CR. So if you are using experience points, then this is, an important table. I tend to use milestones more myself, though I understand the difference between using milestones and XP. We've used XP in the past. I like milestones for longer running campaigns, just because it makes it easier for me as the person creating the campaign and the story to keep everything organized and built around a certain level. But if you're playing even in a campaign that has different characters joining each session, or if it isn't session based, or if it's not a campaign at all where it's just a whole bunch of one shots, I can see where using XP would be a way better way of managing it. And I could see where having experience points would be different even in a protracted campaign. So I understand both. I just, for ease of use and less maintenance and upkeep, I find it easier to just use the milestone myself. Proficiency bonus by challenge rating, traits, special abilities, multi-attack, bonus actions. To ensure monsters act in accordance with its challenge rating, follow these rules during combat. If the monster has special abilities that deal a lot of damage but has a limited number of uses, such as recharging breath weapon or a spell it can cast only once per day, have it use the special ability as quickly and as often as possible. I don't know that I like this section, multi-attack. If the monster has multi-attack, have it use multi-attack on any of its turns in which it's not using one of its more powerful abilities. Bonus actions, reactions, legendary actions. If a monster has bonus actions, reactions, or legendary actions in its stat block, make sure it uses them as often as it can. I don't know that this codifies it a little too much for me. I even talked about in a previous video that every combat isn't about how quickly can you kill all the bad guys. Sometimes it's better to use combat differently and use non-combat abilities. And I guess in general you're going to want to use the most powerful ability it has available, but I feel like you can probably figure that out. It's just a weird the way that they put that together. Then obviously they have actions, bonus to hit, what happens on a miss on some abilities. Sometimes something will happen if you hit or miss. Saving throw effect notation. If an effect forces a saving throw, the effect identifies the kind of save required and then provides the save DC. Yeah, half damage only. Okay. Damage notation explains how that works. Multi-attack, spell casting, spell components. If a monster can cast any spells, its stat block lists the spells and provides the monster's spell casting ability, spell save DC, and spell attack bonus, unless noted otherwise. A spell of level 1 or higher is always cast at its lowest possible level and can't be cast at a higher level. I think there are some examples where, like we saw on the dragon, that it specifically casts Guiding Bolt at level 4, even though it's a first level spell. A monster's spell can have special rules or restrictions. For example, a green slod can cast the invisibility spell, but the spell has a self-only restriction. Okay? I feel like if the monster wants to upcast something, that it should, you can certainly do that. Again, that would be homebrew. So we're discussing this as though we're just using the regular rules. It's weird that they wouldn't be able to upcast it, but I understand that because they've made changes so that monsters don't really have spell slots anymore. They have certain abilities they can they can use once, twice, 3 times a combat. So that's a little bit interesting. Spell components. The spell casting trait notes whether the monster's spell casting ignores the need for certain spell components. If any spell components are required, describe the monster's use of verbal, somatic, or material components to signal to the characters that it's casting a spell. A monster that requires material components has them. That's important for counter spells. If you want to, different tables do it differently, but a lot of times the dungeon master will say that the wizard is casting a fireball, and so then the players decide whether to counter it. I kind of like the idea of the wizard is casting a spell, and then you have to decide whether to counter it before you know what it is. That's the way it's supposed to work, but it's not always the way that it does work as a dungeon master trying to run the encounter. Sometimes you forget that the players can do things like counter because you're juggling a lot of information, and so you just say, yeah, they're casting a fireball, everybody make a dexterity saving throw, and then they can counter it and know whether or not it's a spell they want to counter. Casting time of 1+ minutes. If a spell has a casting time of 1 minute or more, yet it's listed as in a spell casting action, that monster doesn't cast the spell in just one action unless the action's description states otherwise. The monster must take the magic action on each of its turns to maintain concentration to cast the spell. So if it's listed as an action, I'm going to have to see that in a stat block, I think. The spell has a casting time of 1 minute or more, because there's nothing that has like a 3-round casting time. It's either an action, a bonus act. It's either one of your actions on your turn, or it's a minute or more. Yet it's listed in a spell casting action. The monster doesn't cast the spell in just one action. So if it's a spell that takes a minute or more, they have to concentrate for that entire minute, which would be 10 rounds. It's kind of weird. It's weird the way that's read. Bonus actions, reactions, we all know what those are. Legendary actions, they're listed in this section. Legendary action is an action that a monster can take immediately after another creature's turn. Only one of these actions can be taken at a time, and only after another creature's turn ends. The monster can't take a legendary action if it's incapacitated. The monster has a limited number of legendary actions, and that number is specified in the stat block. There's going to be a lot of X times a day things, like it can cast a certain spell this many times a day, or it can teleport this many times a day. Recharge X to Y. So this is like the breath weapon. If it's like it recharges on a 5 or 6, then on a 5 or 6 you can, if you roll a 5 or 6 at the start of their turn, then the ability will recharge. Why? I don't know why I'm having so much trouble getting my chat to show up. I can see that I have chats, but it's not showing me any of them. I just want to see what you all have to say. There we go. It would be interesting to have different players receive different XP within the same long-running campaign. Yeah, I mean, that's the way it used to be, but then it used to be that everybody had different XP amounts they needed to level, and that's like the current version of Dungeons and Dragons. It feels like they have tried to balance the classes so that at level 5, no matter what class you are, you're all equally viable. Whereas in some of the older versions, certain characters would have bigger XP amounts they needed to level because they were more powerful. So a 5th level, of one class may be equal in power to a 6th level of another one. So they kind of adjusted the XP so that it would level up at that rate. And I mean, it's really six of one, half a dozen of the other, whether you make sure that they level up at the rate so they're equal powered, or you just make sure that they're equal powered at the level. Either way is kind of the same. So I kind of have mixed feelings on that one. Yeah, I like the XP using numbers, and if someone does something exceptional, then they would receive an XP bonus. Yeah, and they talk about some of that in, I think, in the player's handbook, maybe, or maybe the DMG, where they talk a little bit about how they could get, bonus XP for doing stuff. A lot of times that's not going to make a huge difference depending on how much it is, since you only level up after a long rest anyway. So it's a matter of, you've got a couple hundred XP more, but you both are a long way from the threshold, or you go way past the threshold to level up. So it could have some differences there too. I'm also the one who likes different XP needed to raise levels by class, but I'm old and crusty. Yes, Phil, old and crusty. Yes, I hope no direwolves eat this book, Ed, because I still haven't got a replacement for that one after my brother's direwolves ate everything. Can we see a ghast, please? Sure. I think we're done with the basics. We can start taking a look at some specifics. Let's go to the ghast. Looks like there's 2 ghasts in this book. Ghasts, typically found in swamps, underdark, and urban areas. They can have any treasure. Ghasts frequently organize ghouls into packs and deposit crypts and steal the wealth within. So your basic ghast here is a medium undead, chaotic evil. 36 hit points, 13 AC. It's just a CR2, not super powerful. Resist necrotic. It's immune to poison. That would be the poison damage. So it's immune to poison damage, and it can't be charmed, exhausted, or poisoned, the condition. It has the stench trait. Any creature that starts its turn in a 5-foot emanation originating from the ghast, so 5-foot radius around the ghast, DC 10 Constitution saving throw. The target has the poison condition until the start of its next turn. Success, the target is immune to the ghast's stench for 24 hours. So it's kind of like how every morning when my wife wakes up and smells me, once she makes her save, she's good for the rest of the day. But up until then, the first few rounds of the morning is rough, I'm sure, for her. You were looking for the DC 10? Yeah, so it's pretty low difficulty for that. I don't think I've seen anything less than a DC 10 on anything. So I think that's as low as it would go. But again, it's just a CR2, so this is something that you would throw at much lower level parties, or as just general mobs against medium and higher leveled parties. So I could see where DC 10 is probably going to be, maybe a third of your party would fail that. A third to a half of your party would fail it at the beginning of their careers as lower level characters. But maybe a quarter to a third. Expect 1 or 2 people to fail in a higher level party. It has a bite that does some piercing and some necrotic damage, and a claw. And the claw does just slashing damage, but if the target is a non-undead creature, it is subjected to the following effect. Constitution saving throw, and the target is paralyzed until the end of its next turn. And they reduce the time of being paralyzed, but not so bad, really. No, it's not too bad. The target has paralyzed condition until the end of its next turn. So yeah, it's just until the end of their next turn. So basically, they lose one turn. Depending on when their turn is in combat, other monsters in the combat may have some advantages against paralyzed persons. See, the paralyzed, they can't move. Automatically fail strength and dexterity saving throws. Attacks against them have advantage. So it could be used, to help out other party members or other monsters. The creatures in the combat would benefit from it, but I'm trying to think here. Any attack roll that hits you is a critical hit if the attacker is within 5 feet of you. So it gives you some automatic criticals. So it wouldn't be something that the Ghast would benefit from other than taking one of the monsters out of the fight for a round. But it would certainly benefit the other creatures in the combat with the Ghast, allied with the Ghast. Let's look at the next one, the Ghast Gravecaller. This is going to be a higher CR1, I would guess. CR6. It still has the stench, but its DC is up to a 13. Still the rest of it is still the same. 5-foot emanation and the poisoned condition. This one, though, has more hit points than AC, but it also has the multi-attack. Ooh, one other thing is it is now immune to necrotic and poison instead of just resistant to necrotic and immune to poison. So this one's gained the immunity to necrotic. The multi-attack, it makes 2 necrosis attacks. 2 horrific necrosis attacks, and it can replace 1 with a claw attack. So if it wants to claw and then horrific necrosis. So that's a new attack that the previous one didn't have, right? Or did it? Yeah, it just had bite and claw. So once it becomes more powerful, it forgets how to bite. Once it levels up, it doesn't know how to bite anymore. Got it. But the horrific necrosis is a melee or ranged attack. A range of 120. It's a pretty good range. 15 damage, and the target has the frightened condition. So it didn't have a ranged attack before. So they're giving it a ranged attack. Can also be used in melee. Giving it the frightened condition. Frightened, you would have disadvantage on ability checks and attack rolls when you can see the Ghast Gravecaller, and you can't get any closer to it. So it could use this at range and then be able to keep you from getting into melee range. So it could use something like this against, your party's fighter or paladin that maybe doesn't have as powerful ranged abilities. And then paralyze the guys that get in close. It does have spell casting. It can speak with dead. And thaumaturgy. Neither one of those feel super combat useful, I wouldn't think, but are certainly useful outside of combat. So I suppose you could use the Ghast Gravecaller as a NPC that the party has to talk to maybe instead of fighting, and could use some of these abilities. That could be interesting as well. So those are the 2 Ghasts that they have. I did have a note that I wanted to look at the Ghost, which we are right next to, so why don't we take a look at that. Underdark and urban areas. I feel like a ghost should be any. Ghosts arise when living creatures die in a state of extreme emotion or having left an important task undone. I feel like some humanoid or creature or whatever could die at any time in any place, and so I don't feel like they should have any specific habitat. It's interesting, the treasure is any. They're incorporeal and they can't carry anything, but they could have any treasure. I suppose it's just around where they died maybe. Ghosts typically appear as semi-transparent versions of the creatures they were in life. Though some bear evidence of the wounds that killed them or have nightmarish distortions to their form, many have extreme reactions to actions, objects, or individuals that remind them of emotionally charged aspects of their lives. Ooh, big stat block. Okay, we'll look at the top part here real quick. Medium undead, only an AC 11, and 45 hit points. That's not a whole lot of either. They are a CR 4, but I think that their challenge rating, they're resistant to tons of stuff. Acid, bludgeoning, cold, fire, lightning, piercing, slashing, and thunder. So most attacks against them are going to be resisted. So they're only going to take half damage from a lot of that stuff, meaning that 45 is really more like 90 hit points. There's a few things like psychic and poison. Nope, they're immune to necrotic and poison and all of these conditions. So it'll be hard to lock them down, and they'll take either none or half damage from a lot of attacks. They do speak Common and one other language. They have ethereal sight, so they can see into the ethereal plane. Incorporeal movement. Incorporeal. That's one of the words I have trouble pronouncing. The ghost can move through other creatures and objects as if they were difficult terrain. It takes 5 force damage if it stops inside one of them. Inside an object. Gets 2 Withering Touch attacks. The Withering Touch does 19 damage. That's pretty good. CR 4 if this was a boss fight against level 3 or 4 party, and it gets 2 attacks and hits with both. 19 damage on average. Almost 40 points of damage will probably drop maybe not a fighter or a barbarian, but some of your rogues and wizards and sorcerers might get dropped by 2 Withering Touch attacks. And being able to pass through objects, it could certainly sink down into the ground and move and then pop up right behind the rogue or the wizard or something like that. Be a bit of an ambush predator. Can also cast the Etherealness spell, requiring no spell components and using Charisma as the spell casting ability. The ghost is visible on the material plane, while on the border ethereal, and vice versa, but it can't affect or be affected by anything on the other plane. So when it switches to the ethereal plane, you can still see it, which is not usually the case, but you can't affect it. Yeah, the aging effect on ghosts was dangerous. They changed a lot of things, like the aging effect and the loss of your strength and stuff when you get hit by shadows, and they kind of just made it. They gave you a similar effect, like if you get hit by a shadow, I think you get like minuses. We can take a look at that later, but you get minuses to your strength-based attacks and things like that, just to simulate that without actually having to track your age and your adjusted strength score and stuff like that. But I don't know. I kind of like aging a character and having effects happen to the character based on how old they're getting. It also has a horrific visage, much like me, with a wisdom saving throw DC of 13. Each creature in a 60-foot cone that can see the ghost and isn't an undead. So it's a cone attack. So I guess like it has to be looking at you, so it can only look in one direction. Does 10 psychic damage, and the target has the frightened condition. Feels very thematic. Kind of reminds me of the library scene at the beginning of Ghostbusters, where they all clearly failed their wisdom saving throws, and were scared and ran out of the library. Here's the reason that I wanted to take a look at the Ghost. The Possession, it's a Recharge 6, DC 13, one humanoid that the Ghost can see within 5 feet. Failure, the target is possessed by the Ghost. The Ghost disappears and the target has the incapacitated condition. It loses control of its body. This is one of the few times where they take player agency away by controlling them and making you do things. The Ghost now controls the body, but the target retains awareness. The Ghost can't be targeted by an attack, a spell, or other effect, except one that specifically targets undead. Now that's interesting. So you can't attack the Ghost. You could attack the body that it's possessing, but you can't attack the Ghost specifically unless it is a spell that targets undead in particular. The possession lasts until the body drops to 0 hit points or the Ghost leaves as a bonus action. When the possession ends, the Ghost appears in an unoccupied space within 5 feet of the target, and the target is immune to the Ghost's possession for 24 hours. On a success, you're just immune to it for 24 hours. So what I really wanted to look at the Ghost for this in particular is this: it can only target humanoids. Now, in their videos, when they were talking about the changes in creature type, they specifically said that they took into account how the creatures change in creature type would be affected by certain spells. And I believe that they looked at that, but I'm wondering how much they took into account things like this ability. So a Ghost could possess a humanoid, but it can't possess a goblin or a bugbear or anything like that. Now again, as we've discussed, you're the dungeon master. You can have it do whatever you want, but we're evaluating this based on how the actual rules are written and worded, and I think that that's a poor decision. I think when you look at goblins, they are fey and goblinoid. Why couldn't you also put in parentheses humanoid? Why couldn't they? You can make them fey if you want, but make them also affected by things that affect humanoids. It seems so easy and makes so much sense. And I feel like they're trying to fix a problem that wasn't a problem. And I just wondered what made them think to do that. So, okay. That's the end of that rant on creature type changes until the next time I start ranting about creature type changes. Let's go look at the Tarrasque. In the previous version, get off of there. The Tarrasque could be killed by a first level character, a first level Aarakocra with a cantrip, because they could fly and just stay out of range. Did I already pass it? It's up here. They could fly and stay out of range because the Tarrasque had no ranged attack. I homebrewed the heck out of the Tarrasque when I had some players fighting it to give it a ranged attack, but they also didn't have regeneration in the previous version, and so I gave the Tarrasque a bunch of regeneration too. I did see this on some things earlier too. They kind of give you some stuff that might you could use to hint to your party members that something is around. Some monsters stat blocks have this and some don't, but like massive footprints or claw marks. I mean, like, when you see in the Godzilla movies, they're all standing inside a giant footprint. You could have your parties as they're walking through the plains, all of a sudden find a trail of massive footprints, or maybe a giant shield or a giant scale the size of a shield. Shattered mountains as it just crawled through the mountain instead of going around or over. I think that gives some interesting, interesting little lore or whatever that they're adding for the Tarrasque. I like how they add that. It gives you some ideas of things that you can add, just some flavor, but doesn't give you necessarily, force you into one of those four. You can come up with other things, but I like when they give you these suggestions because it kind of starts the wheels turning and gives you some other ideas of things to do. Amongst the devastating creatures, the most devastating creatures in existence, the Tarrasque is an engine of catastrophe and a ruiner of nations. It's bipedal, prehistoric monstrosity, over 70 foot tall, horns, spikes, shiny carapace. Is a creature of tireless rage. It lashes out at any creature that catches its attention. Let's take a look here. 25 armor class, nearly 700 hit points. Its initiative of plus 18 means that it will almost always be going first. It's just its base is 28. So that's a pretty big bonus. You're going to have some pretty big buffs on your player characters to go before the Tarrasque generally. It's resistant to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing. Now, previously, I believe it was maybe immune to non-magical bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing. You know what we can do? We can take a look. Let's take a look. Did I misspell it? I did. Look at the 2014 Tarrasque. Yeah, it was immune to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing from non-magical attacks. They've completely gotten rid of this, and instead just giving things resistance to those abilities instead of immunity to them. It's got a few more hit points. 25 armor class, it's now at 28, wasn't it? No, still 25. Immune to fire, poison, and then several conditions as well, yeah. It had legendary resistance, magic resistance. The reflective carapace only worked on a 6. I feel like that worked more frequently in previous editions. So it's got 6 legendary resistance instead of 3. So it's resisting way more frequently. Still has advantage on saving throws against spells. So it's resistant to most physical damage, and it is resistant to all spells. Yeah. The reflective carapace still completely deflects a magic missile, and 1 in 6 times. If the Tarrasque is targeted by a magic missile spell or a spell that requires a ranged attack roll 1d6. On a 1 to 5, the Tarrasque is unaffected. On a 6, the Tarrasque is unaffected and reflects the spell. Okay, so it's still unaffected by the spell. If the Tarrasque is targeted by a magic missile spell or something that requires an attack roll, so any attack roll spell against the Tarrasque is just going to fail, so it won't take any damage from things like even a firebolt or a blight. Blight's a save, isn't it? Any targeted attack roll, it's going to possibly reflect back at you, but definitely not be affected by. And any save, it's going to have advantage, so it's probably going to take half damage from anything that you make it save on as well. Multi-attack makes 1 bite and 3 other attacks using claw and tail in any combination. So the dragon used to have bites, claws, and tail attacks, and the dragons now just have the rend, and you can just flavor it however you want. But the Tarrasque keeps the different kinds of attacks. I suppose it has to a certain extent, simply because it can eat you. So it needs to have a differentiation between the bite and the claw and the tail. But I'm surprised the claw and the tail weren't combined into one. 36 damage on the bite. It only gets 1 bite attack too, so even if it doesn't grapple you. Pretty good chance to hit at plus 19. Good. Very few characters have, more than a 22, 23, 24 on their armor class. Even at higher level, that's still pretty good armor class. Would only need a 5 to hit armor class 24. You get the grappled condition and restrained, and you can't teleport, so you can't get out. You can't bonus action Misty Step or something like that and escape being grappled and restrained in the mouth. Claw attack and the tail attack, both decent damage. Tail does a little bit less, but also knocks a creature prone. No saving throw. If you're hit by the tail, you are just laying down to rest. And then it finally has a ranged option, the Thunderous Bellow. Recharge, recharge 5 to 6. Constitution saving throw, DC 27. So it can't use a ranged attack every round, but you could use a ranged attack about once out of every 3 rounds. When I homebrewed the Tarrasque, I added an ability where it picked up a giant chunk of earth and chucked it at you, which did essentially the same damage as a claw attack. So all it really did was add range to a claw attack. DC 27 Constitution saving throw, and each creature and each object that isn't being worn or carried in a 150-foot cone takes 78 damage and is deafened and frightened. So a 150-foot cone is pretty good range. So if you are trying to Aarakocra fly up and hit it with like a Sacred Flame until it's dead, you're going to be within range of this ability. I'm trying to think. Warlocks have the ability to increase the range of some of their attacks. So you might still be able to do it, but I think that the extended range invocation is like 30 feet per level or something. So you'd still have to level up a little bit, but in theory you could get out. You could eventually, if you built a character designed to do it, you could eventually get the ability to fly outside of its range and just cantrip it to death. The restrained effect, sure. Currently, the new version says you have a speed of 0, and it can't increase. Attack rolls against you have advantage, and your attack rolls have disadvantage because something's holding you. You have disadvantage on dexterity saving throws. When someone's got a hold of you, it's hard to get out of the way. So that is the restrained effect. We also had down here, that was it. Restrained, yeah. And grappled, your speed is 0. You have disadvantage on attack rolls against a target other than the grappler. So this one goes a step further and says you just have disadvantage on attack rolls, but also attack rolls against you have advantage. So when you're just grappled, they don't have advantage against you. So the swallow ability, yeah, you should still be able to throw a spell if it is an attack roll spell like a firebolt or something like that, you'd still have disadvantage. But anything that was a saving throw based spell, you'd be able to do. One large or smaller creature can be swallowed by the Trask, and it can have up to 6 creatures swallowed at a time. The target is swallowed, and the grapple condition ends. Oh, so you're no longer grappled once you're in its belly. A swallowed creature has the blind and restrained condition, and can't teleport, again with the can't teleport. So the Trask can't be escaped. It has total cover against attacks and other effects outside of the Trask. So total cover, a target behind total cover can't be targeted directly. So you couldn't, even if within range, target a creature inside the belly of the Trask with like a heal or anything like that. If behind more than 1 degree of cover, a target benefits only from the most protective degree. So if you have partial cover and total cover, you just have total cover. You also take 56 acid damage at the start of each of the Trask's turn. It's a lot of damage. If the Trask takes 60 damage or more on a single turn from a creature inside it, the Trask must succeed on a DC 20 Constitution saving throw at the end of that turn or regurgitate all swallowed creatures, each of which falls into a space within 10 feet of the Trask and has the prone condition. If the Trask dies, any swallowed creatures no longer have the restrained condition and can escape from the corpse using 20 feet of movement, exiting prone. Okay, so it has to take 60 points of damage from a creature within the Trask. And if you're inside it, you are restrained. So you would have disadvantage on your attack rolls. So any attack rolls, you would have disadvantage. You are blind, so you can't see anything. Now that's a little bit weird, because a lot of spells you have to be able to see something to target it. I feel like if you're trying to target the inside of the Trask, you should be able to target it even if you're blinded. I mean, it's right here. Feed it 10 cows and then attack it. Yeah, good strategy. But even if you do manage to somehow do 60 points of damage from inside the Trask, it still requires it has to fail a DC 20 Constitution saving throw to allow to spit you back out. It also, because that's not enough yet, has legendary actions. I'd like to run this one now. I ran a Trask in another campaign, and like I said, I homebrewed it a little bit to get rid of some of the things like its lack of a ranged attack, to keep my party from just kiting it. But I'd like to try it with this version of the Trask as well. But anyway, it gets 3 legendary actions. It can move up to half its speed and make 1 claw attack, or tail attack. So let's see, the tail attack, reach of 30. So it can move, and then it can move closer, and then it can hit you with a tail attack and knock you prone. So it's going to take half of your movement to get up. Then it can move away from you. Its movement, half of its movement is 60, so it can move 30, trip you. Well, let's see, it moves up to half its speed, and it makes 1 claw or tail attack. It doesn't say it moves half its speed and then makes an attack. So it could make the attack and then move. It just tells you 2 things it does. I think I saw some other stuff where it specifies it does something and then it does something. So I'm going to suggest, if it doesn't say and then, that you can do it in either order. The Trask moves up for the world-shaking movement, moves up to its speed. At the end of this movement, the Trask can create an instantaneous shockwave in a 60-foot emanation originating from it. Creatures in that area lose concentration, and if medium or smaller have the prone condition, the Trask can't take this action again until the start of its next turn. So it can only use this particular ability once per turn, not 3 times per turn. But I like that it knocks people prone, and it basically stomps its foot and knocks everybody prone and causes everybody to lose concentration. Your spirit guardians are down, or your conjure minor elementals. That stuff all drops. So I like that ability. That seems like that's a fun ability to use. Yeah, it'd be interesting to play this, use this creature now with some of its abilities. I mean, good AC, great AC. I mean, we're talking about level 20 characters probably, because it is a CR 30 monster. But good hit points with all of its resistance and immunity. It's probably going to take, that 697 hit points is probably more like 1,200. And then the fact that targeted spells can't hit it and has an advantage against magic spells. Strength saving throw, so it can eat people. Yeah, this would be a fun one to try. Sorry, Carrie, but you guys may fight one of these later. Just because it would be fun. For me, less for you, more for me. Okay, well, I'm glad they made some updates to the Trask. Let's take a look at the Shadow. We talked about that earlier, about how the old Shadow. Let's go check out the old Shadow. '24 Shadow. So it's strength drain ability. It did reduce the strength. Okay. And the target's strength score is reduced by 1d4. The target dies if it reduces its strength to 0. Otherwise, the reduction lasts until the target finishes a short or long rest. If a non-evil humanoid dies from this attack, a new shadow arises from the corpse. I don't know why an evil humanoid wouldn't also rise as a shadow. Okay, let's see the new shadow. We have, it just says shadow shapes. Habitat might be on the Shadowfell. Shocking. Underdark, urban. No treasure. Shadows are incorporeal. Incorporeal. Man. Being dumb hurts. Shadows are incorporeal undead that feed on life. They resent the living for possessing the potential and vitality lost to them. Shadows lurk in deep and dark, lonely places, typically sites that were meaningful to them in life. Shadow shapes. So that's what this extra is. There is a variety of things they could look like. A fiend that dwells near a wicked ritual site. Its target acting in eerie pantomime. An ominous priest that haunts a defiled site. Just grasping hands that haunt a miser's home. So the shadow, challenge rating just a half. This is a pretty tough CR half creature. 27 hit points, 12 AC. But it also has resistance to a lot of stuff. Acid, cold, fire, lightning, thunder. Immunity to necrotic and poison. Immune to all these conditions. It is vulnerable to radiant, so you might be able to get through that with some radiant abilities. But the fact that it's resistant or immune to all that other damage type really makes those 27 hit points feel like a lot more. And that is a lot for a CR 1/2 creature. It can squeeze through 1-inch openings. It does have disadvantage in sunlight, but that's not a huge debilitating effect, as it's probably going to be spending most of its time not in the sunlight. It can take the hide action as a bonus action if it's in the appropriate lighting. And then its attack still reduces the strength score by 1d4. And if it dies, or it dies if it's reduced to 0, and this time a shadow rises from the corpse 1d4 hours later. So this time it doesn't matter if it's evil or not. The shadow rises, but only if it's a humanoid. I won't go on my creature type rant again yet. It's only been 10 minutes, so we'll hold off on that. But only a humanoid can be killed and raised as a shadow. Well, that's interesting. So it does do the strength drain, though. So that's interesting. What is Shambling Mound? Mound of Cultivation. So this is just what it looks like. Inspire the Shambling Mound's origin and features, covered in vibrant alien or Feywild blooms, hauling a rune-etched menhir. It's like a big stone thing, right? In its torso, infested with vermin or fungi, made up of knotty vines, entangling skeletons, mutated and leaking glowing pollution, the remains of an ancient tree or treant. Well, that's interesting. No, goblins aren't humanoids. Quit taunting me. The Shambling Mound is one of my favorite mid-tier kind of monsters. I really like playing them. There's a lot of fun things you can do in like encounter design with them, because they are very hard to spot. It doesn't really give them that ability in here, but a lot of times a Shambling Mound just would look like a pile of vegetation. So, I mean, I would think it would be, I mean, it's got +3 to stealth. It's normally got a -1 on its dexterity, so apparently it's proficient at stealth, but I might even give it more than that. I think. Resistance to cold and fire. See, that one's a little bit weird. I feel like this might be a good place to have a vulnerability. I mean, it's made out of plant material, and plant material is notoriously flammable. That's how we make fires. And if you've got a garden, you certainly know that plants don't enjoy cold, as everything dies when it gets cold. So those resistances are a little strange to me. I like the immunity to lightning, because I really like its lightning absorption. It's fun when players aren't familiar with Shambling Mounds and unknowingly hit it with lightning and heal it. It's interesting. Like the flesh golems have the same ability, and essentially, and it's there's lore behind it. A flesh golem is like Frankenstein, so lightning brings it to life. So I wonder if there's some sort of lore with Shambling Mounds that I'm unaware of. I mean, I'm sure there is. Charged Tendril. That's new. I don't believe the old Shambling Mound had a charged tendril. Shambling Mound. I think that's going to be the new one. I need the 2014. Yeah, it had engulf and slam, so it just smacked things around and then engulfed. Whereas the new one still has the engulf, but instead of just a regular slam attack, it does lightning damage. Not a ton, but some. So it doesn't do a ton of damage in general. Pulls it 5 feet closer. Shambling Mound can make 3 charged tendril attacks. So it's not a ton of damage. It's like an average of about 12 damage, but it makes 3 of them, so that's pretty good. And it can replace 1 attack with an engulf. I suppose you could hit the same creature a couple times and pull it 10 feet closer to you. I'm going to bet that one medium or smaller creature within 5 feet to use the engulf, so you'd have to attack it until you can pull it in. Until you get it close enough. The target is pulled into the Shambling Mound space and has the grappled condition. Until the grapple ends, the target has the blinded and restrained condition. And it takes 10 lightning damage at the start of each of its turns. When the Shambling Mound moves, the grappled target moves with it, costing it no extra movement. The Shambling Mound can have only 1 creature grappled by this action at a time. So it does a little bit of lightning damage. Again, it's a little bit weird because they don't, they can absorb lightning, but I don't know why they have these lightning abilities. Previously, it just took bludgeoning damage. So I guess they're just trying to liven it up a little bit. So I really do want to know what the deal is with the lightning. I'm going to have to do some research on Shambling Mounds now to understand the lore behind them a little bit better. It tells me a little bit up here. Shambling Mounds, also known as Shamblers, embody the tenacity of the wilderness, seeking only to consume and grow. These masses of vegetation rise up to half again as tall as a human and possess thick limbs and a vague head. As they move through bogs and undergrowth, they ensnare creatures that come within reach. Shambling Mounds bury those they catch within their own forms as compost. Strange circumstances might give rise to Shambling Mounds, transforming vegetation into hulks with rudimentary cunning. Such conditions include strikes from magical lightning, nature defending itself, or druidic curses. Roll on or choose a result from the Shambling Mound cultivation table to inspire the Shambling Mound's origin or feature. So it does mention specifically one possible way that it was created is through a lightning bolt. So a magical lightning bolt. So that gives a little bit, but other than that particular one, if you choose a different one of the suggestions or come up with your own, there's no real lightning involved. I never particularly knew why it had the lightning absorption. I just liked that ability. So, I don't know. Yeah, more research. More research needed. Okay, let's see. I wanted to look up some information about dragons and their lairs. So, they aren't going to be under D for dragon turtles. I have to look up a specific one. So let's just go with like a red dragon, the big boys. Typically found in hills and mountains, treasure any. Red dragons take whatever they desire and burn to ash anything that stands in their way. These chromatic dragons endlessly desire more magic, territory, treasure, or whatever else inflames their cruel ambitions. They make their lairs amid perilous cliffs and volcanoes. Within they amass and fiercely protect hordes of treasure, and many have perfect recall of the hoard's contents and the locations of all they've collected. Should anything go missing, red dragons fly into rages. Red dragons believe themselves to be the greatest of all dragons and, by extension, the greatest of all creatures. Scrolling down just a little bit, we'll come back to those. Dragon lairs. Red dragons make their lairs in smoldering, unapproachable places such as volcanoes, mountains, burning wastelands, and ruins they've stolen from other creatures. The region containing an adult or ancient red dragon lair is warped by its presence, creating the following effects. So that's why they didn't put that until you got past the young dragon. Burning heat. The area within 1 mile of the lair is an area of extreme heat. A burning creature or object takes an additional 1d4 fire damage at the start of each of its turns. Smoldering haze. The area within 1 mile of the lair is lightly obscured with clouds of ash. Lightly obscured, you have disadvantage on perception checks. Whenever the creature, other than the dragon or one of its allies, finishes a long rest in the area, the creature must succeed on a DC 15 Constitution saving throw or have the poisoned condition for 1 hour. I guess that has to do with the noxious fumes. If the dragon dies or moves its lair elsewhere, the effect ends immediately. So, like, you kill the dragon and the haze just drops out of the sky and the temperature just drops 40 degrees up to a mile away. That'd be interesting if you weren't the adventurers killing the dragon, that you're just going through the area that's known for this intense heat and this poisonous cloud around it, and you're just walking along and all of a sudden just gone, just disappears. An adult red dragon unleashes fire, a fury reducing the city to ruin. Adult red dragons are tyrants that claim vast domains and might command armies of followers or significant magical resources. Red dragons rarely pay attention to the nations and claims of smaller creatures, and they might consider entire cities part of their realm. Most red dragons are inattentive rulers, though spending decades focused on their own comforts, horrors, and magical concerns within their lairs. But when their attention returns to their territories, if they find matters not to their liking, whole lands might burn. So there's a couple effects that can happen in the area, but not in the lair specifically. Let's come down and look at the ancient red dragon. Few can withstand the wrath of the ancient red dragon. These dragons' greed matches their ruinous potential. Their lairs frequently tap into volcanic depths and might pierce other planes of existence, bringing servants from the elemental plane of fire or the lower planes into their service. That'd be an interesting campaign if your characters, for some reason, were on the elemental plane of fire and they found a portal back to the real world or back to the material plane, and it spit them out into a dragon's lair, and the ancient red dragon was just there like, "Hey guys, how you doing? You look delicious." So, ancient red dragons, 22 armor class, 500 hit points, pretty stout. 30 strength, 27 charisma, 29 constitution. Not super dexterous. Immune to fire, but no other immunities, resistances, or vulnerabilities at all. Legendary resistance 4 a day, 5 in their lair. They can make 3 rend attacks. They can replace one of these with a spell casting of Scorching Ray, 3rd level version. So the 3rd level Scorching Ray does 2d6 damage. 3rd level, so it's just 1 above. So it creates 1 additional ray for each. 3 rays, so it will create 4 rays doing 2d6 fire damage on each one of them. And its spell casting modifier and its spellcasting, here we go, plus 15 to hit with spell attacks. So plus 15 to hit for an average of 7 fire damage. It's pretty good. But I want to replace one of the claws or one of the rends. I suppose if you needed or wanted ranged attack, because you could create 4 rays. Do the rays one target within range or at several? So you could split it up if you wanted to. That's cool. So that would be like 28 points of damage if all of them hit, where you would do 29 points of damage with a rend, your basic attack, 10 fire and 19 slashing. Okay? So it's a similar damage if all of them hit, but you could spread it out a little bit, so I could see some benefits to that. Its fire breath does 91 fire damage in a cone with a tough save. And it can cast command at will, level 2 version. Does that add another? Target must succeed on a wisdom saving throw or follow the command on its next turn. Choose the command from these options. I feel like previously command lets you create your own command that the dungeon master then was able to monkey paw if they could. I don't remember if it had specific ones listed, but by having these listed, it tells you specifically what each of the commands are going to do. Grovel, the target has the prone condition. Flee, the target spends its turn moving away from you by the fastest available means. Not the safest, the fastest. So that's interesting. I'm kind of curious how the old command worked. Oh, 2nd level. So what is it? It doesn't show me anything here for upcasting. It says it's a 2nd level version, so they skipped that part on there. You can affect 1 additional creature. So you can cast that instead of using your abilities. Detect magic, Scorching Ray, Fireball once a day at 6th level. So normally it's 8d6 at level 3. So it'd be 11d6 damage. Or Scrying. It has its lair actions, Commanding Presence. The dragon uses spellcasting to cast command. Level 2. The dragon can't take this action again until the start of its next turn. I was trying to think of some combinations you could use, like commanding it to drop its stuff and then commanding it to flee, so that then it was, nowhere near its equipment and the dragon could pick it up or step on it or whatever. But you can only use this once. You can target 2 people. You can only give them 1 command, so you wouldn't be able to do that combo exactly. You can use your Scorching Ray, and you can pounce, move half your speed, and make 1 rend attack. So that's relatively stout. Being able to command, send the melee combatants running, since they have to take the fastest route, maybe through dangerous terrain. Keep them out of your range. You can also then move your speed a little bit further away and attack somebody else. So if you could position yourself between the melee fighters and maybe the casters in the back, then you could make the melee fighters flee, and then you can move closer to the casters, be out of range of the melee combatants. Some interesting strategy you might be able to use on some of these new creatures. Let's take a look at one of the smaller red dragons. Young red dragon. Still, it is a CR10, but it doesn't have any of the saving throws or spells or anything like that. So 56 damage, 178 hit points, 3 rend attacks, immune to fire. I mean, that's a lot of damage on a breath weapon. I don't know that feels super super difficult at challenge rating 10. I mean, again, a lot of damage, but if you make your saving throw, you're looking at like 25 damage. It probably maybe only gets out 1. If it's in its lair, inside somewhere where it can't, do flyby and just fly away and wait for its breath to recharge. If you find one of these young red dragons in the open, it could use completely different strategy. Breathe fire on you, then fly out of range and wait for it to recharge and come back, breathe fire again. It does have a reach of 10, so even if it isn't recharged, it can stay out of range and just claw you. So the good range and the breath weapon, yeah, that might be a CR10, especially out in the wilderness. But if you have it cornered inside somewhere, maybe not as powerful. And then, of course, the CR4 Wormling. Still pretty stout. Okay. I am out of coffee, so if you guys will excuse me for a moment, I'm going to have Cletus say hello to you, and then I will be right back.
Well, hey guys, it's me, Cletus McGillicuddy, and I'd just like to take this opportunity while Seth's getting something to eat or drink to remind you that this would be a great time to subscribe to the channel. Maybe even turn on that notification bell so the next time we go live, you'll know all about it. And while you're at it, if you're so inclined, you could join as a member. Maybe even check out the merch store and get yourself a nice Hack the Dungeon mug. But whatever you do, just make sure you tell all your friends about it. Alright, Seth's coming back. I'll see you later.
Okay. Thank you, Cletus. Thanks for the plug. I appreciate it. I have more coffee now. We're good to go. Ooh, green screen gets rid of the Hack the Dungeon logo on this one. Okay, so that was a look at the dragon. Like I said, the dragon's lairs, there used to be some cool abilities to do in the lairs. Now they just get a few extra resistances and legendary actions. We've talked about it in other videos. I would absolutely add some extra stuff to the lairs that would, environmental effects and stuff. You should always be adding that anyway, because you don't want rooms that are just big empty rooms with nothing in it but monsters to smack around. Let's see, what else? Let's see, I wanted to take a look at doppelgangers. Way down here. All the way down. Underdark and urban areas. Supernatural beings with the ability to shapeshift into a human-like form. Their mind-reading abilities aid them in creating a near-perfect disguise and plucking secrets from unguarded minds. Occasionally, doppelgangers use their shape-shifting ability in more overt ways, transforming into unsettling forms to frighten foes. Interesting. Doppelganger's agenda might relate to its mysterious magical origins or to more mercenary goals. Roll on or choose a result from the description table. I never thought of doppelgangers as having a mysterious magical origin. I just thought they were shape-shifting creatures. So here we have potential plots. Conceal evidence of a vast conspiracy. Replace a noble to enjoy a decadent lifestyle. Spy on wizards to learn how to complete its own botched magical creation. So, it's not a creature. It's like some sort of creation. I always thought the doppelgangers were just shape-shifting creatures. Okay. CR3, 52 hit points and 14 AC. Immune to being charmed. No other vulnerabilities or immunities or resistance. Can make 2 slam attacks or use its unsettling visage. The slam attacks do 11 damage with advantage during the first round of each combat. I mean, I guess that's because you're surprised because you aren't expecting it because it shapeshift into something, but that's not necessarily true. Can read thoughts, cast detect thoughts requiring no spell components, and using charisma as its spellcasting ability. Detect thoughts. You sense the presence of thoughts within 30 feet of you. Lasts for 1 minute. It is concentration. So he could pretty much have this up all the time. Because there's no limit on how often. So he could pretty much just be detecting thoughts all the time. Except in combat, if it runs out, does only have 1 minute duration, or if he takes damage. You can sense the presence of thoughts within 30 feet of you. You don't read the thoughts, but you know that a thinking creature is present. It's blocked by 1 foot of stone, dirt, or wood, 1 inch of metal, or a thin sheet of lead. So you can sense all the creatures around you. So if there's something invisible, you might at least know that it's there, maybe know where it's at. Target 1 creature you can see within 30 feet. You learn what is most on the target's mind right now. Oh God, I hope it doesn't see me. If the target doesn't know any languages and isn't telepathic, you learn nothing. And then it has its unsettling visage. DC 12 wisdom saving throw. Each creature within 15 feet. Originating from the doppelganger that can see the doppelganger. The target has the frightened condition and repeats the saving throw at the end of each of its turns, ending the effect on a success. After 1 minute, it succeeds automatically. So it can scare the party. This will be useful if you aren't really interested in fighting them, give you an opportunity to get away maybe. It can shapeshift. The doppelganger shapeshifts into a medium or smaller humanoid, or it returns to its true form. Its game statistics other than its size are the same in each form. Any equipment it is wearing or carrying isn't transformed. Only humanoids. Just saying. I do like doppelgangers, especially in more social-based campaigns, less combat-heavy campaigns. Having doppelgangers as NPCs. One of my campaigns had a doppelganger that was a bartender, and he was also he had a doppelganger that was actually 3 different characters or 3 different NPCs within the campaign. And I kept dropping hints to the players by having that particular NPC say something that NPC didn't know, but that other NPCs noted. And but the party never put it together. Part of that is due to the fact that we are, that campaign only played once a month, so you don't necessarily remember exactly who told you stuff. So I tried to be as obvious with it as I could without just flat out saying, hey guys, I'm a doppelganger. But the party never realized that like half of the NPCs were actually the same person. So that was kind of fun for me in the background. But the party never figured it out. So I guess I can use that trick again sometime. Now let's take a look at one of my favorites. And one of the horrifying creatures in Dungeons and Dragons, the Mind Flayer. Their habitat is the Underdark. Generally, though, you can find Mind Flayers in a lot of places, depending on what their plans are, what their crazy schemes are. You could certainly find them in outer space in the Spelljammer stuff. Their treasure type is Arcana. If I hover over this, does it give me anything, or does it just want to do a link? Scattered survivors of a world-ruining multiversal empire. Mind Flayers lurk in secret conclaves, hidden deep within material plane worlds. Within their alien sanctuaries, these wicked masterminds, also known as Illithids, reshape the Underdark and its inhabitants to serve their unfathomable whims. Mind Flayers are feared for their psionic powers, which allow them to stun and control other creatures, and for their horrific method of feeding, using their 4 slimy tentacles to extract the brains of their victims. Mind Flayers are infamous plotters and manipulators, concocting plans that reach beyond their subterranean realms. Aside from using their psionic powers to control others, Mind Flayers often experiment with their own bizarre life cycles, implanting other creatures with Illithid young to create unnatural servants. Creatures such as Grimlocks and Intellect Devourers result from Mind Flayers' biological tampering, while other Underdark dwelling monsters, including Koatoa, Quaggoths, and Troglodytes, often serve Illithid masters. Githyanki and Githzeri have a long adversarial history with Mind Flayers and bear the scars of Illithid manipulations. So let's see. The red link, apparently I can hover and get a little bit of information. The blue just takes me to the other page. Their colonies. Mind Flayers work as lone schemers in mysterious cabals or as part of a world-spanning Illithid conspiracy. In groups, Mind Flayers work towards bizarre agendas organized by an elder brain, a massive brain-like being with incredible psionic powers. Without such a leader, groups of Mind Flayers fall to self-destructive squabbling. Roll on or choose a result from the Mind Flayer machinations table to inspire your Illithid's conclave's plot. Let's just say it for what it is. Brain removal is unique to them, and it's horrifying. Yes, it is. I agree completely. So it is a medium aberration. 99 hit points. CR 7. So your standard Mind Flayer isn't super high CR. But you're not going to wander upon a Mind Flayer just cruising down a hallway on its own. So the CR7 is not, you wouldn't have a party fight just a Mind Flayer on its own probably very often. I'm frequently without my brain. I think my boss would suggest that I've been attacked by a Mind Flayer long ago. They're going to have a breastplate? That's interesting. Mind Flayer breastplate. We haven't seen a lot of gear on the creatures, so that's interesting. They're resistant to psychic damage, but they aren't immune to it. Magic resistance, so they have advantage on saving throws. Tentacles. If the target is medium or smaller creature, it has the grappled condition after taking the 22 damage. It's interesting. It doesn't have any kind of multi-attack. So if it uses the tentacle, that's all it's doing for its turn. From all the Mind Flayer's tentacles, the grappled condition, it has the grappled condition from all the Mind Flayer's tentacles, and the target is stunned, or has the stunned condition until the grapple ends. So a Mind Flayer could grab an individual creature, and that creature would be stunned, but then could not, wouldn't be able to attack anybody else with that ability because it's grappled. Extract Brain. One creature that is grappled by the Mind Flayer's tentacles, 55 piercing damage, half as much on a success. If the damage reduces it to 0, the Mind Flayer kills it and devours its brain. Yummy, yummy. So that is, that's pretty good damage. Again, the problem is, like I said, you wouldn't want this guy by himself, so his minions would want to keep people under control so that it could pull this off. One thing I think they did change something. No way. The Mind Flayer, Extract Brain, used to be one incapacitated humanoid. So they did update it. In this particular case, they changed it so that a Mind Flayer could eat the brains of other creatures. Come on, get that out of there. Because it's just a medium or smaller creature now, and a creature that it has grappled. So they did make a change to take into account the fact that they are changing the creature type of a lot of stuff. Grapple me? No, I'm grappling you. It has a Mind Blast, Intelligence Saving Throw, DC 15, 60-foot cone, and it stuns people until the Mind Flayer's next turn. I suppose, it's just until the Mind Flayer's next turn, half damage on a success. So I suppose you could till the end of his next turn. So if you stunned people, then you could, with your Mind Blast, then maybe you could grapple the one that survived. But even then, at the end of the turn, the next turn you'd grapple, and then everybody else in the party would be unstunned, would recover. Or I suppose you could use the Mind Blast ability after you attack somebody. So you grab somebody with the tentacles, and then to protect yourself, you can Mind Blast everybody, but you wouldn't then be able to extract the brain that same turn. Be some interesting things to do, depending on what else is in the Mind Flayers, on the Mind Flayers team. They also have a few spells. Detect Thoughts. We looked at that one earlier for somebody. I don't remember who we were looking at when we did Detect Thoughts. Was that just the doppelganger, maybe? It can also dominate monster. One creature you can see within range must succeed on a wisdom saving throw or be charmed. You have a telepathic link with the charmed target. Let's see. The target has advantage on the save if you or your allies are fighting it. Whenever the target takes damage, it repeats the save, ending the spell on itself on a success. You have a telepathic link with the charmed target while the two of you are on the same plane of existence. Once you're on your turn, you can use this link to issue commands to the target. Attack that creature, move over there, or fetch that object. The target does its best to obey on its turn. If it completes an order and doesn't receive further direction from you, it acts and moves as it likes, focusing on protecting itself. You can command the target to take a reaction, but you must take your own reaction to do so. So this would allow you, excuse me, you could try to dominate somebody if the party didn't know you were there, like if you're hidden. Not a great stealth, but if for some reason you were hidden and you knew the party was there, you could try to dominate one player. Then maybe have that player command that player to attack their own party while you're essentially protecting you while you are tentacles, while you use your tentacles to grapple somebody and extract their brain. So maybe the other person would keep them busy. Perhaps they wouldn't notice, like, while they're trying to stop their party member, that you are eating their friend. I don't know. And then you can mind blast the rest of the party. You just got to make sure that you don't include the dominated character inside the mind blast, because it would break the dominate monster. And you can always skip out with plane shift. This is one of those times where you don't get the full ability. It's self only. Because you can go to any plane. It doesn't specify. But you can get out. And then, of course, the Arcanist, Mind Flayer Arcanists enhance their psionic abilities with magic. Other Mind Flayers view those that undertake such experiments with disgust and fear. So most of it's going to be essentially the same. Tentacles, Mind Burst. Oh. Once you decide to start using magic, you can no longer extract brains. How are you supposed to eat? That's how they feed. They took away the extract brain ability. Do you not need the extract brain ability anymore? And instead of a cone mind blast, it becomes a mind burst, emanation 40 feet. 41 psychic damage, and the target is stunned until the end of the Mind Flayer's next turn. So that's interesting. They have different... the Mind Blast became a burst, and they can't extract brain. And it's arcane tentacles instead of grappling. They do the psychic damage, and the Mind Flayer can teleport up to 30 feet to an unoccupied space the Mind Flayer can see on a surface or liquid large enough to support the target. Liquid able to support the target. Do they have water walking or something? If the damage reduces the target to 0 hit points, the Mind Flayer kills it and magically devours its brain. Okay. So it's not a active eat the brain. It's a magical, just consumes it if it kills something with its arcane tentacles. Melee or ranged attack roll. So they could do it up to 100. They can eat your brain from across the room. Okay. All right. It has detect magic, detect thoughts, disguise self, so you won't necessarily know that it's a Mind Flayer. You can seem 1 foot shorter or taller, appear heavier or lighter. You must look different until the spell ends. You must adopt a form that has the same basic arrangement of limbs you have. Otherwise, the extent of the illusion is up to you. I mean, are the tentacles limbs? I would guess not. Could you just make yourself look like a different Mind Flayer? Or could you make yourself look like a humanoid? The changes wrought by the spell fail to hold up to physical inspection. For example, if you use the spell to add a hat to your outfit, objects pass through the hat. Okay. And, of course, Mage Hand, which is invisible. Once a day, Clairvoyance, Dimension Door, Fireball, 5th level. So that would be 10d6. Lightning Bolt, 5th level, Plane Shift, self only, and Sending. And he can also cast Shield twice a day. The Mind Flayer can cast Shield in response to that spell's trigger, using the same spellcasting ability as spellcasting. In response to that spell's trigger, like the Shield spell's trigger, that's just worded really well, or really strangely. So 16 AC, twice in the combat can bump it up to 21. CR 11. Pretty good. That could be a fun one. I could have fun with this. Let's see. Along with the Mind Flayer, why don't we take a look at one of their pets, the Intellect Devourer. Oh, I've gone too far. Oh, we'll come back to you, Mimic. Intellect Devourer. Oh, I've left the document. Intellect Devourer has just a CR2. Not too bad. It can make one claw attack, and it can make a claw attack and use Devour Intellect. The claw attack, not a ton of damage, 7. Not a horrible saving throw at DC 12, though it is intelligence, which is frequently a dump stat. One creature that it can see, this is another instance where I think that it used to say one humanoid, but now it's just one creature. So they made an adjustment there. Takes 11 psychic damage, and the target has the stunned condition. And then it can steal body one small or medium creature within 5 feet that has the incapacitated condition, is a humanoid or a beast, so can't steal the body of a goblin or a bugbear or any of those other things. Can only steal the body of humanoids or beasts. It's interesting combination. And has 10 or fewer hit points, so you have to target something that's almost dead but not quite. The Intellect Devourer possesses the target, consumes its brain, and teleports inside its skull. While there, the Intellect Devourer has total cover against attacks and other effects originating outside the host. The Intellect Devourer retains its intelligence, wisdom, and charisma scores, its understanding of deep speech, its telepathy, and its detect intelligence trait. It otherwise adopts the target's game statistics. It knows everything the target knew, including spells and language. Now that's interesting. So, the Intellect Devourer could pose as something else. So maybe instead of a doppelganger being one of the NPCs, maybe it's an Intellect Devourer that's one of the PCs. It's got a pretty good intelligence. It could fake it. If the host body dies, the Intellect Devourer must leave it. The Intellect Devourer is also forced out if the target regains its devoured brain by means of a wish spell. If the target regains its devoured brain by means of a wish spell. I mean, I would guess that, a different party member might use the wish spell. I think that the dead creature probably can't. The Intellect Devourer can voluntarily leave the body, teleporting to the nearest unoccupied space within 5 feet. The body then dies unless the brain is restored before the end of the Intellect Devourer's next turn. No, Caradwin, the goblins are not humanoids. Phil Tillman, you can polymorph into a goblin. But I don't know how well you could roleplay that, because that would raise your intelligence score quite a bit, becoming a goblin. They serve their mind flayer creators by consuming other creatures' brains and puppetizing the mindless bodies. These quadrupedal brains seek to ambush sapient beings, then drain their thoughts until they're mindless. Then drain their thoughts until they're mindless. They are mindless. Then, if the victims are humanoids, they enter the creature's skull. With access to the victim's knowledge and control of their body's intellect, devourers use their perfect disguise to pass as people they've replaced to further the Mind Flayer plots. Okay, let's go back. That is most of the stuff that I had listed that I really wanted to go take a look at. Is there anything anybody else in the comments would like to take a look at? Any creatures in particular? Let's command spell. I wonder. Media collections. My encounters. Ooh, I should be careful here. You guys might see stuff you're not supposed to see. Create new. So currently the campaign that I'm running has 5 8th level characters. So they do have the new versions of stuff in here. Ooh, I know what you're talking about. The catapult bee. Catapult bee. Let's go look at that. There are a few entirely new monsters. We can take a look at those too. Catapult bee. Pretty sure I saw it earlier. Wait, isn't it? Is it CO? No. I don't see the catapult bee. Unless I'm just totally missing it. No, I don't see it. What was that? Just gonna look cat. See what we can find. I know what you're talking about. I remember. I don't see anything. I can't think of how to spell it. They talked about a lot of new monsters. Some of the new monsters are like, there was an Aarakocra. Now there's the Aarakocra Aeromancer and the Aarakocra Skirmisher. So a lot of the new monsters they're talking about, that's what they're talking about. Is they've created like sub new monsters. The Archhag is new. There's been some videos about the Archhag. They wanted a lot of new higher level monsters. So like the Archhag is, they have lairs, but it's a CR21 hag. And do they have the Coven magic? Yeah. So like the hags in general are more powerful when there's 3 of them together. And the Archhag is more powerful if there's 3 of them. But they're already a CR21 monster. So like the thought of 3 CR21 Archhags all working together is moderately horrifying. They get, like when they're within 30 feet of at least 2 hag allies, I guess they don't have to all be Archhags though. Just 2 hag allies. So you could have a smaller hag, a hagling, if you will, They can augury, find familiar, identify, locate objects, scrying, and unseen servant. So nothing super exciting that they can cast when they're all together. It's interesting they can only have a familiar if they're in a coven. Like a level CR21 hag can't have her own cat familiar, only if she's in a coven. They're resistant to cold, fire, and psychic, and immune to charmed, exhaustion, and frightened. Decent hit points, not super great, but for a CR21, I mean, we saw the CR22 dragon had 500, so quite a bit more. They do have legendary resistance and magic resistance. Spiteful escape. When it drops to 0, oh, this is one of the interesting things about the Archhag. When the hag drops to 0 hit points, it dies only if it is within 30 feet of its anthem. The thing the DM chooses as the hag's most hated thing. So it's similar to how a lich works, where it dies, it just goes back into its phylactery, wherever that is, and, is reborn or whatever within 10 days. So you have to know where the lich's phylactery is if you want to finish it off. The Archhag is similar in that you can only finish it off if you have whatever its most hated thing is nearby. Otherwise, the hag drops to 1 hit point and teleports to a harmless demiplane. And it can't return to the plane it left for 2d6 days. When the hag teleports away, each creature within 60 feet of the space it left is cursed. Until the curse ends, the creature has disadvantage on ability checks and saving throws, and the hag knows its location anywhere in the multiverse. So it's cursed. I assume it's going to tell us about the curse up here somewhere. Maybe. The curse lasts until you cast a greater restoration or remove curse. So if you do kill a hag, she doesn't die if you don't have her anathema. Anathema? I feel like that's more syllables than I'm used to seeing in that word. Anyway, if you don't have that, the hag simply teleports away to a demiplane, and you're cursed, and it knows where you are. So you will be hunted by an Archhag forever and ever. That's fantastic. 2 spectral claws, doing 17 points of damage. Not a ton of damage for a CR21, but the hag isn't designed to be a melee combatant anyway. Cackling Wave. 60-foot cone, 32 lightning damage. Oh, Crackling Wave. The target is cursed, so you get a curse from this as well until the end of the hag's next turn. The target can't take reactions until the curse ends. So this is your basic force lightning. Electrocution. Spellcasting, detect thoughts, dimension door, dispel magic, hypnotic pattern at will. So just dimension door all over the place. Is that one an action or a bonus action? That's an action. And then, bonus actions down here. Mass suggestion, modify memory, and plane shift twice a day. Witch strike. Each creature cursed by the hag and within 60 feet takes 14 lightning damage. So when you hit them with the crackling wave, or I suppose with the spiteful escape curse, then you can use a bonus action to just electrocute them some more. The hag casts counterspell, and this is the reaction, tongue twister. Using the same spellcasting ability, if the target fails the saving throw, it is cursed, so more cursed, until the end of its next turn. Until the curse ends, the target can't cast spells with a verbal component, and when it speaks, it says the opposite of what it means. They talked about this in one of their videos, and it sounded kind of fun. So, like, you counterspell the wizard, and then the wizard wants to tell the party, guys, I can't do anything, run. And what the wizard actually says is, charge it, I've got your back. And so that could be super fun story-wise to add that in. Stuff like that would be a lot of fun to role play. But it's another method of adding curse. So it seems like there's lots of ways to add curse to the targets so that you can then use your Witch Strike as a bonus action on your turn. Just chuck 14 points of lightning damage around everywhere. Does have some legendary actions. The hag makes a claw attack, which we saw earlier, and the hag uses spellcasting to cast Dimension Door or Hypnotic Pattern. So it can use this Dimension Door to jump around. In between turns, not really as reactions, but it allows you to bounce around the battlefield to stay out of range of the melee combatants, things like that. So that mobility helps a lot with your survivability. So maybe not too bad. And Hypnotic Pattern. The hag can't take this action again until the start of its next turn. So you'd only be able to use one of these, not both, on your turn. But Hypnotic Pattern, AoE, the pattern appears for a moment and vanishes. Each creature in the area who can see the pattern must succeed on a wisdom saving throw or have the charmed condition for the duration. Not the cursed condition. While charmed, the creature has the incapacitated condition and a speed of 0. So you're incapacitated until you take damage. I think I would use this more for the Dimension Door. I mean, this is handy, but I think I would use it more to be bouncing around the battlefield. Would be my guess. So anyway, that's the Arch Hag. Real interesting. I'd like to play that too. Maybe this campaign we're in, you guys can fight a Trask and an Arch Hag. We're just going to give you all the fun high-level monsters, just one after the other. So let's see what else we got. Whole section of awakened plants. Whole section 2. There's multiple axe beaks. Ah, yes. So they added a new axe beak. The old axe beak, pretty basic. Just a beak attack, some hit points. And the giant axe beak, bigger. More hit points, more AC, 5 CR. One sharpened beak and one talon. So previously it just bit you. Now it can claw you, which will knock you prone. Axe beak makes one sharpened beak attack and one talon attack. Yeah. And slashing damage. 18 slashing damage, and a creature within 5 feet of the target takes 6 slashing damage. So it's kind of a cleave. Sharpened beak, it's hitting more than one target. So you could start with the Talon Strike, try to knock something prone, give yourself advantage on it, so that you can make sure you hit it with the sharpened beak, and then you can automatically do 6 damage to the adjacent target that is not, maybe something with a high AC that you have a hard time hitting. You can use this on the first target and then just put some extra damage over there. Azers. I don't believe we had these 2 different Azers previously. So the Pyromancer, CR6. What's the Sentinel? Just out of curiosity. CR2. So the Sentinel's going to be your basic melee guy probably. Fiery Aura. Take some damage. Those things pop up way too quick. It's like I'm just moving the mouse around. I don't want stuff popping up on my screen unless I stop on it. Fiery Aura. Bright light around it. Multi-attack, 2 flame bursts. So they don't have any weapons on them. They melee or ranged for their flame bursts, so either right in your face or at range. And they got Mage Hand, and once a day they can cast Fireball. They also get 2 Hellish Rebukes. So when something attacks them, they can hit them for 2d10 damage. What's Elementalism is? This is one of the new spells. Create a breeze. Oh, this is sort of the like the prestidigitation or whatever for like sorcerers. Kind of affect different elements. But then the Sentinel, some cool artwork. The Sentinel has Burning Hammer is its action, so it's just melee, and the Aura and the Illumination. So no ranged attack on this one. No spells. Just hit you with a hot hammer. Whereas this one gets a few spells and some ranged attacks. Cool. All right, let's go to B. See what we got new in B. Balor. Some cool Balor art. Bandits. So here's where you would. Let's go to bandits. You want orcs. This is how you get them. Roll on or choose for their motivation. Oh, you could have good ones that only fight oppressors. Ex-soldier who was discarded by their nation is in a gang that views non-members as foes, hesitantly serves a villainous leader, secretly works for a government or a regional ruler, takes what they need to survive. Boy, they gave you a lot of options for bandits' motivation that is not evil. I feel like most bandits just want all your stuff. I mean, they give you that option. Takes what they need to survive. But again, it's to survive. Like, they could all go be laborers, but they want to steal stuff because it's easier. And that's not really an option that's in here. Oh yeah, they serve a villainous leader, but it's hesitantly. Quit trying to make bandits be like good guys. Ridiculous. So your basic bandit, if you wanted your orc bandits. Oh, nope, you can't. See, bandits are medium or small humanoids. Oh yeah, because orcs are humanoids now. Right. Medium now, are still. I couldn't have a goblin bandit, though. Bandits are medium or small humanoids, so you have your bandit has a scimitar and a light crossbow. Basic attacks. 1/8 CR. Pretty weak. Your basic humanoid. Your bandit captain makes 2 attacks using the scimitar and the pistol in any combination. If you have firearms in your campaign. If not, I suppose you could sub that in for like a crossbow or something. Gear. Another time where we actually get some decent gear. Pistol, scimitar, studded leather armor. And they can parry. So as a reaction, add 2 to the AC against that attack, possibly causing it to miss. So just against one attack, though. Nice. Bandit Deceiver. You deceiving deceiver. Dagger. Blinding Flash. Ooh, 10 poison damage. So the dagger adds piercing damage plus poison damage. This is a CR7, so quite a bit bigger. What was the captain? CR2. Blinding Flash. Constitution saving throw. Each creature in a 10-foot radius sphere centered on a point the bandit can see within 120 feet. 13 radiant damage. And the target has the blinded condition. It's pretty good. Can also cast Mage Armor. So let's see, its armor class is 16. Mage Armor 13 plus your dex. 13 plus 3. So basically it just always has on its mage armor. Has a wand. It's arcane focus. Can cast disguise self, mage hand, minor illusion. Hold person a major image. Bandit crime lord. CR 11. This is the big bandit. Not much to him. You know, better hit points and armor class. Evasion. The bandit is subjected to an effect. Also just the regular evasion. Takes half damage or no damage if it makes its save on dexterity. It does get 3 attacks using scimitar and pistol in any combination. And then it gives itself advantage on 1 attack as a bonus action. Not super exciting, but there you go. Basilisk. Oh, we have more than 1 basilisk now? No. Just information about the victims. I feel like there used to be like a dire basilisk. Basilisk is only a CR3. Does poison damage as well as piercing damage when it bites. It has cone. Each creature in a 30-foot cone. If the basilisk sees its reflection in the cone, the basilisk must make this save. The target has the restrained condition and repeats the save at the end of its next turn if it is still restrained, ending the effect on itself on a success. Second failure, the target is petrified. Condition has the petrified condition instead of restrained. So petrified can't move. Can't move, is incapacitated. Attack rolls against you have advantage. You automatically fail strength and dex saving throws, but not automatically fail wisdom or intelligence or charisma saving throws. You have resistance to all damage because you stoned, and immunity to poison, to the poisoned condition. Recharge 4 to 6. All right. Berserkers. Berserker and a commander. Blooded Frenzy. This might be a good one for orcs. The Berserker and the Berserker Frenzy. Black Dragons. Black Pudding. Blights. Blink Dog. The Blob of Annihilation. One of the things they said they were doing when they were adding higher level characters or creatures was that they wanted to have a high level boss, campaign boss type monster for each creature type. So the Blob of Annihilation is the giant ooze. The Blob of Annihilation is a coagulation of cosmic entropy conjoined to the remains of dead gods. This malicious entity drifts through wild space. Where are you going? What's happening there? Drifts through wild space and multiversal expanses. The blob poses the greatest threat when disasters or nihilistic magic users summon it to inhabited realms. Once unleashed, the Blob of Annihilation rolls across the land in vast cosmic gyrus. Why can't I say that word? Things that it might contain: an amulet of the plains inside its body, an artifact of the DM's choice, the corpse of 2 gods who were entangled in battle when the blob consumed them, cubic gate, a deck of many things, magic key that opens door and sigil. And yes, it's pronounced sigil, not sigil. Those people are all wrong, including the creators. I don't care. The preserved corpse of an Krakens, the skull of a death god, a Trask that just died. Interesting things to put in a blob. I feel like the blob would still have trouble fighting a Trask, but who knows? Let's take a look at its stats and see. 448 hit points, 18 armor class. I suppose a lot of the Trask's abilities revolve around protecting itself from ranged attacks, or from spell attacks. So a Blob of Annihilation probably doesn't have a lot of spell attacks. resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing, immunity to acid, necrotic, and poison, astral implosion. I had one of those once when I ate some chips with Olean. If the blob is reduced to 0 hit points, it implodes and ejects any creatures and objects engulfed by it to the astral sea. The blob itself vanishes, leaving behind a layer of slime on everything that was within 600 feet of it. In 1d20 years, the blob reconstitutes on a random world in the material plane. So they are just immortal, and you just have to hope that they don't come to your house. So that could be, I think I talked in one of my other videos about interesting adventures using the Blob of Annihilation. An interesting adventure might be that some high-level party killed it and it exploded and threw everything to the astral sea, and now your mid-level characters have to go to the astral sea to retrieve whatever got shunted to the astral sea. That could be a fun adventure as well. Maybe I need to make one of these campaigns with multiple groups, or well, with one group of players, but multiple characters of different levels, so that like your main characters are high level and kill the Blob of Annihilation, and then your mid-level characters have to go into the astral sea to rescue it, to rescue the people that got shunted to the astral sea. You could have all the adventures kind of tied together. That'd be fun too. Maybe I'll have to do that. Multi-attack, it makes 2 pseudopod attacks. It can replace 1 attack with a use of Restraining Glob. 24 damage. It's not a ton for a CR23. But I suspect that its pseudopod attack isn't its primary activity. The blob moves up to its speed and can move through the space of a huge or smaller creature and object. What is its speed? 30 feet. It doesn't have a huge speed. You could outrun a Blob of Annihilation. I mean, the thing is big enough to eat cities, and you can outrun it. The blob moves up to its speed. Okay, 23 strength saving throw. Each creature or object whose space the blob enters for the first time during this move. The target is engulfed. While engulfed, a target has total cover against attacks and other effects outside the blob. When the blob moves, the engulfed target moves with it. Non-magical object is destroyed after spending 1 minute engulfed. Non-magical object is destroyed after spending 1 minute engulfed. So 1 minute in there and everything inside is gone. So, I mean, there's the skull of a god. Sure, you could say that the remaining skull of a god is magical enough to not be completely destroyed immediately. But like everything else in here, you're not going to see stuff inside it. Interesting. Treasure hunters and theologians sometimes give themselves the deadly task of trying to retrieve something from within the blob. This quest usually ends in annihilation, but occasionally it results in the find of a lifetime. I like more that it's slower at dissolving things, so that there's stuff in it. I mean, otherwise there's not much in it. Although I suppose if you see stuff in it, then you know that that's good stuff to get, but whatever. While engulfed, a creature takes 21 force damage at the start of each of its turns. Force damage, because like the pressure, I guess. I mean, I would think like acid damage as it's dissolving everything inside it. You're suffocating. A creature can hold its breath for a number of minutes equal to 1 plus its constitution modifier. Minimum 30 seconds before suffocation begins. When a creature runs out of breath or is choking, it gains 1 exhaustion level at the end of each of its turns. When a creature can breathe again, it removes all levels of exhaustion gained from suffocation, and it's restrained. And it repeats the save at the end of each of its turns. An engulfed creature that is reduced to 0 hit points dissolves into ash, which is ejected to the astral sea. So no resurrection or revivify or raise dead because your body is ash somewhere on the astral sea. See, this is an engulfed creature that is reduced to 0 points, dissolves into ash, but is taking force damage. I really feel like they screwed that up, in my professional opinion. Success, the target escapes and enters the nearest unoccupied spot or space. Restraining glob, the bloblobs, a slimy glob. The blob is a glob. I feel like they did that on purpose. At one large or smaller creature, it can see within 600 feet of itself. On failure, 18 acid damage. See, it's acidic. What's with the force damage earlier? The glob rolls the target 60 feet straight towards the blob. The target has the restrained condition until the end of its next turn when the glob harmlessly dissolves. So it pulls you closer. I suppose if you are less than 60 feet away, then maybe it would pull you in to it and you would then be engulfed. It has legendary actions, decay. The blob deals 14 necrotic damage to each creature engulfed by it. The blob can't take this action again until the start of its next turn, so it can do necrotic damage to everything it's engulfed. The blob uses restraining glob. The blob can't take this action again until the start of its next turn. So it can do that once a turn also. And lashing goop, the blob makes one pseudopod attack. So it'll probably do a grasping glob and a decay and one lashing goop every turn. So there you go. That is the Blob of Annihilation. This is the new blob. Only ones. Next, bullywugs. Let's see here. Do we have some? Yeah. So you have a couple different bullywugs. The Sage has some spell casting, and then your standard bullywug warrior. See what we got in C. No cattle bees, of course. Carrion crawler. Classic. Paralyzing tentacles. What's multiple clay golems? Ah, they're orders they've been given. Cockatrices. Ooh, we have a new cockatrice. So the petrifying bite of the cockatrice. Cockatrices are only a CR 1/2. They're not super powerful, but they could certainly be debilitating if they bite you and you get petrified. It's just 3 piercing damage, but of course, DC 11. But it's the same as the basilisk we looked at, has the restrained and the petrified condition. But the regent CR 8 cockatrice, this guy's a little scarier. Ooh, they have the flyby attack. So the cockatrice doesn't provoke an opportunity attack when it flies out of an enemy's reach. So they can fly in and try to bite you and then fly off. Fly speed of 60, that's pretty powerful. It can make 1 bite attack and 2 talon attacks. The bite attack does 13 piercing. And it has a 14 DC on the saving throw. 1 bite and 2 talons, so it can't make more than 1 bite. And then a couple of talon attacks, and then it can fly off. Magical backlash. Trigger. A creature within 120 feet of the cockatrice deals damage to it. Dexterity saving throw DC 14. The triggering creature takes 13 points of force damage. So if somebody tries to attack it, it just hits them back. I believe the Colossus is the CR 25 construct. This is the high level construct. Just a 70, 80 foot tall statue. 23 AC. It is a Titan. I don't think I noticed this on the blob, but I think that some of these giant things are now, and the Tarrasque as well, is referred to specifically as Titans. 60 foot of movement. That's pretty good. But I suppose when you got long legs like that, you're going to step a long way. Necrotic and radiant. Resistance, immune to poison and psychic. Can't be shapeshifted. Has legendary resistance, magic resistance, and it does double damage to structures. 3 attacks using Slam or Radiant Ray in any combination. Plus 18 to hit and 32 points of bludgeoning damage and pushes you 20 feet, or 22 points of radiant and you're knocked prone. It also has a Divine Beam, 30 foot long, 10 foot wide line. It's a big line. DC 26 dexterity saving throw. It's a tough one to get out of the way of. 65 damage, or half as much on a successful save. So you get 32. But whether you fail or save, a creature reduced to 0 points by this beam disintegrates into dust, leaving by any magical items it was wearing or carrying. So you get dropped by the Divine Beam, and you are just a pile of dust. It does have some legendary actions. It can do 1 Radiant Ray attack, or it moves up to half its speed without provoking opportunity attacks, and it can make 1 Slam attack at any point during that move. So it doesn't even have to do it at the beginning or end, any point therein. So it can run past you. And half its speed, which, as we discussed, is pretty good, would be 30 feet. So it can move 30 feet and stomp. And it can do that up to 3 times around. So on top of its 60 feet of movement, it can move an additional 90 feet during its turns to do this stuff. So if it wanted to stay out of your range and just hit you with its 30-foot long cone or 30-foot long line, it could totally just be dancing around and zap you from far, far away without any difficulty. I know we have a new Cyclops. Crawling Claw. Swarm of Crawling Claws. New Cyclopses. Cyclopi. The Cyclops Oracle is a CR10 Cyclops versus the Sentry that is a mere CR6. The Sentry has a stone club and a rock. They dug into the lore a little bit for Cyclops. A creature the Cyclops can see makes an attack roll against it. The Cyclops imposes disadvantage on the roll. It's limited foresight. And the Cyclops gains advantage on attack rolls against that target until the end of the Cyclops' next turn. So you can glimpse into that creature's future, make it lose or miss you, and you can hit it. Now the Oracle, which is a CR10, pretty good hit points at 207 due to its hefty 20 con. Can make 3 attacks, Radiant Strike or Flash of Light in any combination. Radiant Strike is an attack roll, melee, for 22 damage. Flash of Light is a ranged attack, and the target has disadvantage for 17, and the target has disadvantage on attack rolls until the end of the Cyclops' next turn. So you could fire 3 of those Flash of Lights and put disadvantage on 3 of the player characters. And it can cast Legend Lore once a day, Arcane Eye, Detect Magic, Locate Object twice a day. All right, let's move up to D. What do we have new in D? Death Dog multiple? Nope, just symptoms. Death Knights? Ooh, multiple Death Knights. We must have a new Death Knight. The Aspirants. I think the regular Death Knight, CR17, but they gave us a smaller Death Knight to be used earlier in your campaign. They can parry attacks. A little bit of spell casting, Phantom Steed, Dispel Magic, Destructive Wave. Just a AoE damage spell. 30-foot emanation from the creature. It's got a Dread Blade. It's got Hellfire Orb. That's good. Death Tyrant, horrifying undead beholder. Whenever the creature within a mile of the lair regains hit points from a spell, it subtracts 1d10 from the number of hit points regained. That's pretty stout lair effect. So any healing does 1d10 less. Scopophobia. Creatures within 1 mile of the lair feel as if they're being watched. Any creature that finishes a short rest within 1 mile of the lair must succeed on DC 15 Wisdom saving throw or gain no benefit from the rest. Ooh, so if you don't make your saving throw, you don't get the benefits of the short rest. That's stout too. Well, see, this guy's got some good lair effects. The other guys were pretty lame. And of course, you have all your regular rays. Eye rays, charm, paralyzing ray, fear ray, slow ray, ray Romano, innervating ray, telekinetic ray, sleep ray, petrification ray, disintegrate ray, death ray. Bonus actions, negative energy cone. The Death Tyrant's central eye emits an imperceptible magical wave of negative energy in a 150-foot cone. Creatures in that area can't regain hit points until the start of the Death Tyrant's next turn. An intact humanoid corpse there instantly rises as a zombie under the Death Tyrant's control and takes its turn immediately after the Death Tyrant on the same initiative count. But again, only humanoids. So while it can absolutely demolish an entire tribe of goblins or kobolds, cannot raise any of them as zombies. Chomp makes 2 bite attacks. That's interesting. Or the Death Tyrant uses eye rays, plural. So it's eye, because it's eye rays attack. Death Tyrant randomly shoots one of the following magical rays. So I guess just because it's eye rays, plural, so you would randomly determine what it is. All right. E. Anything new in E? Earth Elementals. Elemental Cataclysm. Is this the new super elemental? Yeah, this is the giant elemental. CR22 elemental monster. Where did that go? So the elemental monster, 370 hit points. That doesn't feel like a lot for CR22, especially with a 27 constitution. It is immune to acid, cold, fire, lightning, poison, and thunder. Interestingly, no resistance against any kind of or any kind of weapons or anything, though. Traits. So this creature is not, it's an elemental cataclysm. So within the vastness and violence of this realm, elemental cataclysms, when they do, typically due to some planar disruption or, okay, yeah. What are you made of? Which element? All of the elements? I guess it's all. It gets Earth Glide. This is what made me go look to try to see if it said what kind of element it's made from. Earth Glide is something that Earth elementals can do, but air, water, and fire elementals certainly can't. So it made me think this must be like an Earth elemental version, and maybe there's other versions, but they don't have any there. Legendary resistance, double damage to structures. It can make 2 elemental burst attacks with its multi-attack. Do 25 damage of whatever type it chooses, twice. It also has Cataclysm creates one of the following effects at random. Clinging Flames, big AoE, 45 fire damage, half on a save, and the target is burning. Is this a new effect? I don't recognize this one. A burning creature or object takes 1d4 fire damage at the start of each of its turns. As an action, it can extinguish the fire by giving itself the prone condition. Stop, drop, and roll. The fire also goes out if it is doused, submerged, or suffocated. Freezing Waves, bludgeoning, and cold damage. So that's 44 total damage. What was the damage on this one? 45, so about the same. The target speed is reduced to 0, so Freezing Waves freeze you in place, immobilized. A storm cloud fills a 60-foot radius sphere. Lasts for 1 minute. Creatures entirely in the cloud are blinded and deafened. Each creature that enters the cloud for the first time on a turn or starts its turn there takes 18 lightning and 18 thunder. So that's each creature. So while that's 36 points of damage, it's a little bit less than some of these others, but it's each creature inside that area. Of course, I guess this one's 90-foot cone. That's each creature in the area, 60-foot sphere. So it's the same. This one's a little bit less, but they also have the blinded and deafened condition. Finally, the Swallowing Earth. Each creature in a 90-foot cube originating from a point on the ground within 150 feet, 18 bludgeoning, 18 acid, interesting acid. And the target has the prone condition and is buried under rubble. The buried target has the restrained condition, total cover, and is suffocating. As an action, a buried creature or another creature within 5 feet of it can make a DC 18 strength check. On a success, the creature is no longer buried. So it would be somebody has to take their action. So not only would they be taking the 36 damage and be restrained and suffocating, they'd also have to lose their turn to dig themselves out, or somebody else would have to lose the turn to dig them out. And it can do control weather. Eruption makes an elemental burst. Rumbling movement moves at speed, fly speed, or swim speed without provoking opportunity attacks. Each creature within 5 feet of the cataclysm is moved. As it moves, is targeted once by the following effect: just knocking people prone. So it just moves around and knocks people prone. The Empyrean is the Titan. Oh, was that one a Titan? I forgot to look. Yeah, Titan. The Empyrean is also a Titan. Celestial Titan. Nice artwork. I like this artwork better than the old Empyrean art. Just looked like a big dude. They have... Oh, that's the Iota. That is not the Titan one. Here we go. Celestial or Fiend. 346 hit points, 22 AC, 23 CR. Legendary resistance and magic resistance. Can make some sacred weapon attacks, which cause them to be stunned, as well as using its divine ray. Can dispel evil and good once a day, plane shift, commune, water breathing, pass without trace, greater restoration, calm emotions at will. Shockwave of glory. Constitution saving throw, DC 23. Each creature within a 30-foot emanation. Get off my screen. Each creature within a 30-foot emanation originating from the Empyrean. 6d8 or 27 force damage, and it's prone. So it can only do this one once, though. But it knocks everybody down. And then it can make a divine ray attack, or it can give itself 10 temporary hit points. and advantage. It and all of its allies advantage on D20 tests. So that's pretty good too, giving yourself advantage. Although, I think we talked about this with something else. I mean, when you're plus 17 to hit, you're not needing advantage a lot. But it gives the advantage to its allies as well. So, for example, it might have an iota with it that is only plus 5 to hit. So the advantage will be super good for the iota that's with it. So that is the Celestial or Fiend 20. Multiple flame skulls? Nope, just more details. Flesh columns? Nope. Flump. Ooh, assistance and colors. So you can roll for its color. Oh, you don't roll for its color. Its color tells you how it feels. You don't want to find a red flump. Ooh, the Violet Fungus Necro Hulk, I believe, is new. Spore Bomb, Rotting Slam, Spore Bomb. .28 necrotic damage and poisoned in a 20-foot radius sphere, and can't regain hit points. You can also absorb body. One medium or small creature the Necro Hulk can see within 5 feet. The target is pulled into the Necro Hulk space and becomes grafted to its body. The Necro Hulk can have only one target grafted at a time. While grafted, the target has the restrained condition and disadvantage on Constitution saving throws. When the Necro Hulk moves, the grafted target moves with it. If the target dies while grafted to the body, the Necro Hulk regains 10 hit points. The grafted target or a creature within 5 feet of the Necro Hulk can take an action to remove it. So if it dies, if the body is destroyed, I'm not sure how, like it's not doing any damage to it unless it's doing the Rotting Slam to the creature it has grafted. G. Gargoyle sculptures, camouflage, gelatinous cubes. Oh, I wish we had new gelatinous cubes. Do have a new ghoul. A CR1 ghoul. Well, that's the same as the previous one. What's different? Oh, icy. I see. It's icy. Watery Rush. So that's like an underwater ghoul. Gladiator. Goblins. These guys are all new because they're all fey. Nimble Escape. That's the same as before. Dagger Attack. The Warrior. CR 1/8 versus 1/4. Slightly bigger. 15 AC and 10 hit points versus 12 AC and 7 hit points. Scimitar and a short bow, so they have more options to work with. Still with the Nimble Escape. The Boss, CR1. Yep. Can redirect. Basically grabs another goblin when you attack him and puts the other guy in the way. And he gets 2 attacks, multi-attack. Goblin Hexer, this is a new one. Multi-attack with his Hex Stick. Does psychic damage, melee or ranged. Or it can cast a spell like, whoa. The goblin makes 2 Hex Stick attacks. It can replace 1 attack with the use of spell casting. So it could still make an attack and throw out a fairy fire on the same turn. Or grease, or blindness and deafness. Each of which you can only do once a turn, or once a day. But I talked in my twin spell video that blindness and deafness is probably a better ability than we give it, or better spell than we give it credit for. And then Jinx, trigger a creature the goblin can see, hits it with an attack roll, Make a wisdom saving throw. The triggering creature. Response. Wisdom saving throw DC 13. The triggering creature. Failure. The attack misses instead. So once a round, when something hits it with an attack roll, it can make them re-roll it. Nice. Growl. Do we have a new growl? Nope, just what they're doing. Guards. Guard captain. H. We get the half dragon. There's a nice video about these. Previously, half dragons just looked like they were dragonborn. And they've really changed them up to be more dragon, I think. So like dragonborns are like quarter dragons, I guess. And these are more half dragons. So it gives it a little more abilities. It's got a decent dragon breath. Let's look at the old half dragon. I want to see exactly what changed. Where's just the regular half dragon? Thank you. We'll go to the half dragon then. Here we go. So it did have a fire breath. Well, this particular one's a red, but it has a breath weapon that does 24, so that's about the same. Can make some melee attacks. 18 AC in its plate, along with 65 hit points. So here they have, was it 65 hit points? It's 105 now? Yeah. So the half dragon got a lot more hit points. It doesn't have weapons. It's clawing. So they really did change it from more of a humanoid to more of a dragon. It was a dragon before. Now, see, before it was a medium humanoid. Here they changed the creature type, and I actually agree. Because otherwise it was basically just a dragonborn with a better breath weapon. Now it's a dragon. Has claw attacks instead of weapon attacks. And breath weapons. Nice. Nice. Information on Hydra layers. What else do we have that's new? And Golem. J. Jackalware. As opposed to a were-jackal. K. Kinku, which are no longer humanoid. They are monstrosities. Knights, kobolds. Kobolds are dragons. But don't we got the kobold warrior, which is very similar to its previous version, and the winged kobold, which I think is also very similar to its previous version. The Kraken. Are you a Titan, Kraken? Kraken Titan? Yep. CR23. I had some players fight a Kraken. It can also use all 10 tickles. Grappled and restrained. It can fling people about. But only above water, not when it's below water. Or when it's underwater, I guess is how that term works. So the Kraken throws a larger, smaller creature grappled by it to a space it can see within 60 feet of itself that isn't in the air. So it can't just throw it 60 foot up in the air and let it fall to take 66 damage. Although 66 damage would be 21 damage, and it's taking 18 damage anyway. So it's still pretty close. Prone condition. Except it does get a saving throw. Lightning Strike. And Swallow. similar to the 50 instead of 60 for the Titan, or for the Tarrasque. And it can use its Storm Bolt. What was its Storm Bolt? Oh, uses the Lightning Strike. So 3 times a round, it can use the Lightning Strike in addition to doing it on its turn. So, 33 points of damage 3 times with just one creature, though, so it's not an AoE. And Toxic Ink. Those are interesting abilities as well. Blinded and Poisoned. Okay. And I don't have a lot of time left because it's early release at school and I have to go pick up the kids. So I've just got a little bit of time left. So I'm kind of cruising through some of these new monsters a little bit quicker just so we can see what's new. Mirrors, Lich, Lich Spirit Jars. I'm sorry, earlier I said Lich Phylacteries. Apparently that was not PC, so we can't call them phylacteries anymore. Now they're Spirit Jars. Uh-oh, did I lose you guys? I don't know if I lost you. I got a message that it disconnected for a second. So I don't know if I actually lost you or not. But it says we're reconnected, so I think we're back. I hope we're back. Lizard folk, it doesn't look like there's just a plain lizard folk anymore. CR4 and CR2. But they don't just have lizard folk. There's no plain lizard folk anymore? That can't be right. What am I missing here? So lizard folk, 1.5 CR. (15 armor class, 22 hit points. Can make 2 weapon attacks. Okay. Pretty basic, but they don't have just a regular lizard folk anymore. That is so weird. Ah, I see. While many lizard folk are humanoids with varied skills, some forge powerful bonds with the elemental plane of Earth, granting them magical connection to the cycle of growth and rebirth. So, if you want a regular lizard folk, like not one of these special ones, if you just want a basic lizard folk, then you have to use one of the, the lizard folk pirate, or you have to use the pirate stat block or whatever. I don't like that. I want my lizard folk to have homebrew anything. We're just looking at the rules as written because that's the system. And I just not having bite as one of the lizard folk's abilities is just dumb. Anyway, can make 2. The Geomancer CR2 can make a couple of earth bursts, so just bludgeoning damage. Small hailstones, hail of stone. Bludgeoning damage. Knocked prone, and they can cast a couple of spells. The Sovereign, which is CR4, does have the bite. Can regain 10 hit points when it bites you, so it's a vampiric lizard folk, I guess, because it re-heals or gains temporary hit points when it bites you. And it can hit you with an earthen maul. I'm guessing that's not like a earthen hammer, but no, it is. It's an earthen maul. Stone hammer. All right. Disappointing. Disappointing there's no regular lizard folk. Mages. So we have an apprentice. I believe that's new. I believe we had the mage and the archmage, but I don't think we had a mage apprentice before. Thunderwave, mage armor, ice knife, arcane burst. So it does have a melee and a ranged ability for 14 damage. CR2 for a mage apprentice. Medusa. They did specify that Medusas can be men or women. That was one of the adjustments. There's only 5 mephits, but there's way more mephits than that. So I'm a little disappointed in that too. I feel like mephits would be a pretty easy one to just put them all in there. See, I thought they had a new mimic. There was like a bigger mimic. Use the following list to inspire mimic shapes. Remember, mimic can be anything, and most importantly, should be something the players are not expecting it to be. Yeah, but there's still just the one mimic. In. Nightmares. Is there more than one nightmare? Nope. I'm thinking of riders. Nobles. Oh, look. See, here's an orc. I was wrong. They do have orcs. Right here. Noble prodigy. Oh, wow. CR10. Noble. Okay, what about the ogre? Ogrillion. I don't remember if they had that in the last version, but they're not new. They were in older versions as well. Odiug. Owlbears. I know we have a new owlbear. The regular owlbear, CR3, the primal owlbear, CR7. More hit points, armor class, resistance to magic, 2 ravage attacks. So previously it had 2 rend attacks. That was all it could really do. Now it has these ravage attacks. Does extra damage if it charges. Target takes 9 extra slashing damage and has the prone condition. So only if it charges can it knock it prone, though. And then the Screech does pretty decent damage at 27. And the target that fails is incapacitated. Pegasus, performers. Be more orcs in here, I'm sure. So those are 3. So this is what I'm saying. Like, they have all these new creatures in here, but some of them are just different kinds of performers, right? Just different humanoids. And that's why they took out things like the orcs as humanoids, because now orcs are just like every other humanoid race, can be anything. Eyes bugging out. Pirates, pixies. Ooh, a pixie Wonderbringer. This one's new. CR5 pixie. That's a stout pixie. Fairy dust. 15 radiant damage, and the target has the charmed or poisoned condition. And can cast invisibility at will, detect thoughts, fly, major image. And Burst of Wonder is a bonus action. The pixie can cast Entangle, Polymorph, or Tasha's Hideous Laughter, requiring no material components and using the same spellcasting ability as spellcasting. So it recharges, but tossing out polymorphs at will is pretty stout. The old pixie I feel like that was something that the old Pixie could do that maybe they took that away. Still invisibility at will. On a CR 1/4 creature is pretty stout. Sleep. The sleep spell changed a bit too. Poltergeist. I think they had a new Poltergeist. No, that was something else. Like a house. Poltergeist house. House. Let's look at ours. I don't think there's anything new there. Scarecrows? No. Shadow Demon, Shambling Mound. We looked at some of these earlier when we were in the S's. They have several different skeleton stat blocks, but I think those are all replicas. I think they have a new Sphinx. Yeah, all these different varieties of Sphinx. They also made Sphinx all super colorful. A little more colorful. CR1 Sphinx of Wonder. Sphinx Secrets, Lairs, Lore, Sphinx of Lore, CR11. Mind-Rending Roar, lots of spells. Arcane Prowl, can teleport 30 feet and then make one claw attack. Constitution saving throw for the weight of years. So here's that aging. They do have some aging in here, but just kind of. So Constitution saving throw DC 16. One creature the Sphinx can see within 120 feet. Target gains 1 exhaustion level. And the target has any exhaustion levels, it appears 3d10 years older. But once it loses all its exhaustion, then it just is back to normal. Cumulative. Each time you receive it, you gain 1 exhaustion level. You die if you ever reach 6. When you make a D20 test, the roll is reduced by 2 times your exhaustion level. So -2 for every level of exhaustion. Your speed is reduced by 5 feet per level of exhaustion. Finishing a long rest removes 1 level of exhaustion. So if you have a few levels of exhaustion, it may take you several days to regain it back. And then the Sphinx of Valor. CR17. This is a big fella. First roar. Frightened. Second roar. Paralyzed condition. Is there a third roar? Yep. Thunder damage. And prone. Has some good spell casting. Not really focused. Not damage-based spells particularly. Same weight of years and arcane prowl ability. The succubus and the incubus have been changed. All succubus are either male or female. It used to be, I could be wrong here, but I feel like it used to be succubus were female and incubus were male. And that was the male-female form of them. Yeah, here we go. Traits, incubus form. When the succubus finishes a long rest, it can shapeshift into an incubus using the stat block instead of this one. So they have a different stat block depending on the form, but they're the same creature. I think that makes it complicated and unnecessary. Trask, Tufts, Treants. Do we have a new Treant? Nope. unicorns and their lairs. Ultraloth. How is this? I'm not familiar with this guy. CR13, pretty stout. So another creature that when it dies just appears back in its own realm. Magic resistance. It's got a whip and a hypnotic gaze. Some spell casting, 5th level fireball. Dimension door, wall of fire. Those are pretty good ones. Bonus action, a misty step, dispel magic, invisibility, suggestion. Ooh, bonus action, invisibility. I mean, it's got a recharge. But after your turn's over, you could, or once you've used all of your attack actions, you could use your bonus action to turn invisible so that you can stay away from everybody until you start your next turn. There are multiple new vampires. They talked about that in some of their videos. Vampire Familiar, which is a humanoid. It's not a vampire. It's just a human. It's immune to being charmed by anybody but its master. Your vampire spawn. So your little mini vampires. I mean, CR5 is pretty good, but stake to the heart. It's got a bite. Can grab some. Regains hit points when it bites. The Nightbringer, a little bit stronger. CR8. Takes radiant damage in sunlight. Did the last one? I don't think so. Oh, yeah. 20 radiant damage while in sunlight and has disadvantage. Only takes 10 while in sunlight. Okay. Bite and a shadow strike. Can hide in shadows. And then you have your classic vampire that we've had for ages. I think it's pretty much the same. Misty Escape. Bite. Grave Strike. It's just a melee attack, right? Yeah. Charm. Shapeshift. Can command and use its strike. And then the Umbral Lord, a higher level. Although not much higher. Wasn't that one 13? Yeah, just 13 to 15. I kind of wish they'd have gone a little bit higher on this one. W. A lot of stuff in W. All the wares. Werewolf. Werewolf. X. We have the Zorn. Y, Yetis, the regular and the abominable. Yuan-Tis, we have several different Yuan-Tis. We had those before. And then finally, in the Zs, we have zombies. Zombie, Ogre Zombie, Beholder Zombie. Those are fun. So that's all the stuff. That's all the new stuff, I think. We covered most of that. Like I said, I have to leave to go get the kids here in just a few minutes. So I'm going to have to call it quits on this stream. Thanks, everybody that came and hung out during my stream. I appreciate it. All the questions and stuff we were able to look up. I hope that you found this information entertaining and informative. Nothing like informative information. So thanks a lot, everybody, and make sure you subscribe so that you can come back and see more videos if you aren't already subscribed. And for those of you that are, I appreciate it. Thank you. And we will talk to you guys.